Good afternoon, guys. I am waiting on my co host to arrive and we'll dive into our conversations and get it started. But glad to have you here. So good to see you this morning. All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up or some hearts. Let me know you hear me. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. Good. I'm just waiting on my co host to get here. I know she was feeling a little under the weather today, but she is doing the tough thing and she is going to be here um, with us. So just bear with us, if you will. And I have a couple of people in the lineup today to add to our conversation. And of course, always look forward to other people who are moved to join us in the conversation to come up and give us some insights and updates from around the country. And today I know will be no different, but I'm going to go ahead and get us started by welcoming you guys to Advocacy Arena's weekly live chat, where we gather to inform and inspire civic engagement each Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern and 12 p.m. Central. Um, we are going to make some noise and continue our commitment to start the week with some good trouble, some necessary trouble to stay informed, inspired, and uplift civic engagement. And I just want to thank you all for continuing to join us to participate and amplify this initiative of Advocacy Arena each week. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into Project 2025. And I had initially said that we would go chapter by chapter, but what I found is that the news is coming at us fast. And sometimes I think there are other chapters and areas that are more relevant than others. So I decided that instead of going chapter by chapter, we're going to dive into the chapters that I think are relevant based on the news that is happening. And of course, some of the recent events of the past week have, has me focused on chapter 4, which is which is the Department of Defense. And again, this is the Project 2025 initiative to basically take over the government. I see my co host is here. I hope she's feeling better. And I've already welcomed everyone and kind of given them a rundown. I look forward to hearing from Dr. Marshall today. She's going to be sharing with us. And later, I know that Mark will be joining us as well. He was very excited and has a lot of things to share with us. Of course, from a legal aspect, we've had a lot of things happening. So just want to give you an opportunity to greet everyone. I already did that. And you, my co host, an opportunity to say hello and to dive in. And I want to just kind of highlight because we're in Black History Month, of course. And I said that I would try to focus more on women, and one of the women that I chose to focus this time on is someone who is in the medical profession and made some accomplishments there. One being the first Black nurse, and also a very key figure in creating an organization for Black nurses. So, with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to my co host, allow her to say hello while I get some things up in the Jumbotron and get some of our speakers in place. So, thank you guys again for being here. Please share and retweet the space. I hope you're not too hungover from the
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
I wish. I watched maybe 2 minutes. I was at home alone. It was it was an eventful evening. So I'm not hungover, believe me. But it feels like it. Let me tell you. We'll just keep praying about it. Miss D tweeted a post about Mary Eliza Mahoney, and it was so amazing because I sent her a message saying, "Oh my gosh, that's one of the people that I was going to highlight today." So, Mary Eliza Mahoney was the first licensed African American nurse. She was born in 1845 in Boston to freed slaves, and they had moved from North Carolina to Massachusetts. She was educated at Phillips School in Boston, and it became one of the first integrated schools in the U.S. after 1855. So she began her career at the New England Hospital for Women and Children, and this was a hospital that was dedicated strictly to women and children, and the physicians and nurses were fully staffed only by women. So prior to becoming a nurse there, she worked like 15 years, I want to say. She was a washerwoman. She was a janitor. She was a cook, and then she was a nurse's aide. She knew she wanted to become a nurse. So at age 33, she was finally able to be admitted into the hospital's graduate program. That was in 1878. And this program was extremely intense. It ran for 16 months, and she was one of only four women who completed the program in 1879. But because of the history of discrimination against Black nurses, she decided to go into private practice. And by 1896, she was an active member in the Nurses Associated Alumni of the U.S. and Canada. And this group would later become known as the American Nurses Association, which I think that we're all more familiar with. But because the group was so unwelcoming to Black nurses, she co-founded the National Association of Colored Graduate Nurses. Um, the following year, this was in 1909, she was elected as the national chaplain for the organization, and she dedicated her life to fighting inequality, and she even served as a director for the Howard Orphanage Asylum for Black Children. And she was a very big advocate for Black women. So when the 19th Amendment was passed in August of 1920, she was one of the first people to register to vote. She lived until she was 80 years old and passed away on January 4th, 1926, when she succumbed to breast cancer. So, it doesn't seem like a straightforward um, story of labor traditionally, but if we really think about it, these early associations, these early organizations of bringing together large collective voices to speak out against inequality, civil and human rights, better conditions for working, better pay, etc. These are foundations for what would later become large scale unions. So I think it's important that we don't ignore it, and I think it's important that we give accolades to um, the pioneers of these early advances of trying to raise standards in different areas of business for minorities, mainly Black women or Black people in general, especially since we're in Black History Month. So that's why I felt she was important. I also have another woman that we can speak about later, Hattie Canty. So just keep that uppermost in your mind. And I'll turn it back over to you, Miss D. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope everyone had a great weekend. Thanks.
Well, I am glad that you're here too, sending you good healing vibes to feel better. And I'm so glad that Dr. Marshall, we're honored with her today, and she is able to come in and share with us. I put a posts of hers up in the nest, which I know is going to connect with what she shares with us. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and then we will continue on from there because this ties into our focus on Black history. And we can start there. And like I said, we may be moving around a little bit because we're definitely going to hit on some of the important events and news stories. And hopefully, Danny will be able to join us at some point in the conversation today, because I think that we have all seen this past week the failure of media, and there's some high profile people and media elites that are calling out the failure and the danger of journalism at this time in our history. So we will get to that. And I know, again, like I said, I expect Mark to join us as well to share some legal updates and analysis, as well as some history, I think. And I see Mickey down there. I put one of her posts up in the nest because she had a trip that she took. That I think is very important and timely to a Black history exhibit. And I hope that if she's able, she can come up and share with us about it. But I certainly look forward to, um, you guys taking a look at it. And I'm so glad that she shared it online, shared that experience with us. So without further ado, I am going to turn the mic over to our wonderful, beloved Dr. Marshall. How are you today?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Or do I need to turn the mic up some?
No, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. Well, hello, Dee. Hello, Soul Sister. And to everyone else in the space, it's good to be able to join today. My voice is strong and I'm feeling good. Soul Sister, I'm sorry that you haven't been feeling well, but I'm sending you love and a bunch of roses and big hugs, hoping that you'll feel better really soon. Happy that you were able to show up and co host today and be a part of the wonderful advocacy arena. So, it is Black History Month, which we celebrate every single day of the year. This year we have 366 days since this is leap year. And we've got a whole lot of changes going on in our country and the world. When I think about advocacy arena, in the past, I think I realized over the weekend that we've focused on everything that's happening to America and internationally, while at the same time focusing on what's happening politically, socially, educationally, and in America and in the rest of the world. But when I think of advocacy arena, or I should say when I've thought about it, I tended to think about the enormous amount of wonderful information I've gotten, that the space has gotten from all of you, and especially those of you who are focused on journalism, who are focused on politics, who are focused on voting, and who are focusing on getting Americans out to not only vote, but to become educated about what's happening in our country, especially the idea that we could lose democracy. and have a funny orange haired man, or hopefully not anyone in his liking or similar to him, as our president. Personally, I am for the Biden Harris team, and that's my focus going forward. It's been my focus all along. But I just wanted to shout out Advocacy Arena before I did anything else, because in the process of preparing this presentation for today, last week I posted information about a Black newspaper called The Echo that I was blessed to have 28 copies of. And I've been working for about 20 years actually to first get the paper together, all of the copies that I owned, and then to get those copies to an institution that would be willing to accept them, digitize them, and eventually get them online. You might think that that's a long time, and it is. 20 years is a long time. But it wasn't just getting the newspaper online, it was about my family history. So today's presentation is all about family history. How do you put together your family history? Where do you start? And whom do you begin with? That's the focus of this presentation. And I've asked Dee to put not only the picture of the newspaper, the article from the newspaper, and the person that I'm going to reference, but I did a little outline. It's in Word and in Adobe. I can do a lot of things in terms of posting, but transferring PDFs to post them on X is not one of my um, top skills. So what I've done is I reposted something that I did last week, which actually is pretty much the same thing that I'm going to talk about. It's just that last week when I posted the announcement that you can now access the Echo newspaper online, I posted it and you're able to click on the links that take you to the Echo newspaper. And included in that link is a partial index to the newspaper. The newspaper is over 100 years old, having been founded sometime around 1911 in Augusta, Georgia. It was a weekly Black newspaper, and it covered not only Augusta, Georgia, where I was born, but it covered Augusta, Atlanta, Savannah, smaller towns in Augusta, state of Georgia. It covered the entire United States. That's one of the things that Black newspapers traditionally, regardless of the state or city that published them, they covered everything. When it comes to African Americans and communication, from our first steps onto this land forcibly, and even afterwards, we've always been interested in communicating, in finding a way to make a way, and to make life better for ourselves. Fast forwarding, let me focus specifically on how do you start your family history? In writing my family history, I have been blessed a lot more than many people in that these 28 editions of the Echo newspaper, as well as the photos and letters that you see me post occasionally, not occasionally, that's a lot of what I post, and the essays that I've written and do write on Substack, for the most part, they are about my family, but they're not just about my family, because I try to put those photos, essays, pictures, postcards, whatever it is, I do my best to put them in the context of not just my family, but of our family, meaning the human family. Um, I make comments specifically to African Americans, but how we intersect with the larger community with whatever the topic is, whether it's education, politics, gossip. Um, in the index, you will see that the Echo newspaper carried articles about Jack Johnson when he was fighting and won the world title. It also has an issue that reprinted the Dwyer Bill, which was the Dwyer Bill was on lynching, and it was introduced into Congress way back around 1920, but it took over 100 years for it to finally pass. It just passed, I think, 2 years ago. That the phrase "it blows my mind" becomes trite because literally, the things that blow our minds, we would have no brain or thought process or ability to think because there's just always some crap going on that's geared to make us feel less than. And we are on the money because we're constantly doing things to let people know that we are more than they ever dreamed that we could be. And we know that we're more than. So, in starting your family history, you begin with yourself, your siblings, your mother, your father, your uncles, your aunts, your cousins, and you write down what you know about that basic family unit. And when I say basic family unit, I'm not necessarily saying that the parents are married. It's not about whether they're married or not. That too becomes part of the family history. But the question is, where do I start? You start with what you know. And however you know yourself, to the extent that you know yourself, your parents, your siblings, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents on both maternal and paternal side, you start with them. And then your next question is, well, what do I write about them? What do I write about myself? As easy as that question may sound, it becomes very difficult because there are some things that you don't want others to know about you. They're very personal, very private. But at the same time, if you're going to write a family history, you've got to start somewhere and you must share something about yourself. So, not everything about you has to be a secret. You can share basic information. You don't necessarily, it depends on what you're going to do with the family history. That is, if it's just going to be circulated among the family, then you can leave out the dates of birth. You may not necessarily want the world to know when you were born, but in today's technological environment, they can pay $19.95 on some site on the internet and find out more than when you were born. But it's up to you. You begin with yourself and you write down those things that you would want to share with someone else. There are many sources, and that is a more narrow focus of what I want to talk about today. Even in writing about yourself, where do you go to write and get the documentation or the receipts? I love that, receipts. When I started hearing people on Twitter, on X, talk about receipts, I was like, receipts? What are they talking about? It's just a difference between sources, facts, all being the same. But some of your receipts would be your birth certificate, driver's license, where you went to school, your diplomas, other activities that you've participated in where you may have won an award. And when you spread that out to other parts of the family, you would ask the same questions. Who are they? Where were they born? Who were their parents? What kind of work did they do? Did they go to school? And depending on how far back you're going, your parents may have been born, let's say, in the 1940s or 1950s. They personally would not have been engaged with slavery or enslavement. Not directly, but indirectly, you might have some enslavement or people who were enslaved in your family. So, therefore, you want to check out things like Ancestry.com or Family Search or MyHeritage.com. Today, 2024, you can get a subscription to these resources. When I first started doing family history, thankfully, my family had saved a lot of documents, a lot of photographs, postcards, letters. I have letters that date back as early as 1895 and other documents that go back to the 1870s. So I didn't need Ancestry or any of these other organizations. I didn't even need to go to the library initially. I could just go right to my own living room and start looking at the documents. And don't forget the Bible. Now, I know people have made comments on things I've posted and sometimes been a little bit apologetic unnecessarily by saying that, oh, I'm not religious or I don't have a deity. Doing family research, in my mind, is not about whether you believe in God or whether you're Protestant, Methodist, Baptist, Muslim, Buddhist, or nothing. It's about telling your story. We all have a story. And after you have looked at the sources that you have, today I wanted to say don't forget about the newspaper. And in this instance, I used these 28 issues of the Echo newspaper. One, I was just amazed that my family had saved these 28 newspapers. They were very fragile, so that I was eager to get them to an archive to have someone digitize them because I didn't have the funds to do it myself. But by donating them, in this case to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, I was able to have them accept the newspaper, digitize it finally after these many years, and get them online. So I will be able to pour through them, as will you and anyone else interested. And as I said earlier, I created a partial index because I spent many hours, many days, and weeks sitting in the floor, being as careful as I could, reading as many issues as I could. So I was able to develop a partial index where when you go online, if you use the partial index, you will find articles by W.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, um, a lot of congressmen of the 1920s, people whose names I don't have in front of me. There's an article, there are articles about international events that were occurring vis-a-vis the politics of that time. The newspaper was not shy in reporting on everything, including a gossip column, who's sleeping with who, and with. It's just amazing. If you took the name, not the name, if you took the date off the newspaper, you might think you were reading a newspaper of today, in the sense that the news that's covered is not specific to one city. It's not specific to Black Americans. It's specific to the educational, political, social, and other kinds of events that, as a human being, growing up in America, the kinds of things that you're interested in that will help move you forward. In looking at the Echo, I was really puzzled by this one article that I chose to focus on, Hazel Harrison's recital. It caught my attention because of the school, Haynes Institute. Haynes Institute was founded by Lucy Craft Laney in 1883. And I wanted to just talk about, again, how do you start your family history? Where do you get information? And how do you know if the newspaper has any information that relates to you? As soon as I saw this article, I knew several things. I knew that, number one, Hazel Harrison had to be a magnificent singer because the school was a private school. The person that founded it was a black woman who was a contemporary of W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, both of whom had visited her school, both of whom had spoke at a church near the school. My family lived 5 blocks from the school, and all of the members of my family from the 1880s, when the school was founded, had attended this school. So I knew there was a strong possibility that one or more members of my family had attended this concert. I needed to know more about Hazel Harrison because the little short article there just tells me she was the first American, not just African American, but the first American to perform a concert in Europe. And she studied with some of the not so well known people of the day, but well known based on my research as being radicals. She had spent time, she was homeschooled for the first 10 to 12 years of her life. To be homeschooled, she was born in 1883. To be homeschooled in the 1880s, 1890s, and even early 1900s was, I'm sure, unheard of. Either you were homeschooled or you didn't go to school at all. So it's not quite the same as being homeschooled today when you have the internet and so many other resources available to you. New York City is expecting 4 to 6 inches of snow tomorrow, and they're saying that they're going to have a remote day instead of a snow day. So basically, kids will homeschool themselves tomorrow. Not something available to Hazel Harrison, but yet her parents apparently had the funds and the ability to teach her at home. She did go to high school. This was in LaPont, Indiana, so that she was able to socialize with her contemporaries, with her peers. But having traveled back and forth to Europe as a pianist and as a concert pianist, when she came back to America, she spent time teaching. At one point, teaching at Tuskegee Institute, another time teaching at Howard University, then later teaching at Jackson State in Mississippi, and even at the University of Alabama. This was a woman who was well trained, well versed in the political, educational, and social activities of her day. When I looked at the article and did more research on her, it was clear to me that I could include her in the environmental background of the city of Augusta and in the possible social activities and politics that my family had been involved in. At one point, Hazel Harrison was given an award from the YMCA as being someone who could be a role model to younger people. That again caught my attention because the YMCA in Augusta was founded, a branch of it was founded by the principal of Haynes Institute, where Hazel Harrison had her recital. Again, the YWCA, YMCA, as I know it today, is someplace where you can go not only for educational and recreational activities, but today's YMCA, YWCA also hold political events. They hold book signings. There are all kinds of activities that are held there. In this instance, here is a private school founded by a black woman who was a contemporary of two men, two black men, well known in America and internationally. She herself, that is Lucy Craft Laney, the founder of Haynes Institute, became a mentor to many younger black women of the time, one whose name is escaping me right now, but she mentored at least 4 to 6 black women who themselves went on to found schools. Um, One of them being, oh my gosh, I should have written it down and I should know it because I wrote my dissertation on it, but my brain is just not taking me there at the moment. But suffice it to say, the point I want to make is in writing about what was life like in 1921, Augusta, Georgia, because this article is from 1921, and I included in the posting from last week an article in 1922. What was life like in that time period? I was drawn to it because, yes, as I said, I was born there, but my family lived there. My ancestors lived there. And in 1921, my grandmother turned 21. So I'm curious, what would grandma have done on her 21st birthday? Perhaps she attended this magnificent concert. I don't know that for a fact because she's not here and neither is anyone else from that generation to tell me if I'm correct. However, based on all the information that I have, I can safely conclude that my grandmother attended this great concert performed by Hazel Harrison, who was an international pianist, who was an educator, who actually taught at the school that I got my bachelor's degree from, Howard University. And she was someone that I'd never heard of. Had I not run across her name in this little article, I would know nothing. But in terms of doing my family history, I can now talk about some of the activities that my family might have attended. I can also speculate about the politics that my ancestors might have participated in. I can do that because I talk about 10 words in the article. I've already mentioned some. Hazel Harrison, the fact that she was a pianist of the race being the African American or black race or Negro or colored as we were called at different times. I can also talk about Haynes Institute because I know that my family attended Haynes Institute. I know that Haynes Institute was the only school in Augusta at that time and that it was private. Even eventually it became public. It was initially an all-girls school, but it quickly became co-ed because the principal and founder felt sorry for the boys looking in. She did not want to exclude anyone, so she very quickly made it co-ed. And she founded the first chapter of the NAACP and the YWCA. So that those events, those things that she did tells me what my family was involved in. Whether or not they were members of the NAACP, I don't know. I know they were members of the YWCA because I have other documents that show they attended the YWCA and were members. So when it comes to writing your family history, don't overlook anything. Use your Bible, use the people that you know, your immediate family, Eventually, you might expand to cousins, to neighbors, if they are members of a church or a fraternity, sorority. All of those things will give you information about your family. Newspapers, not just your major white newspapers or papers from, quote, the majority. Our newspapers are informative as well. I could go on and on about so much more, but let me um, speak for just a couple of minutes about one portion of the post from last week. In writing the post about the Echo newspaper, I included links to the archive. If you want to know what's in the Mary and Marshall collection, you will have to just choose online which box you're interested in and contact Emory University. That will cost you whatever Emory is charging for you to have a copy of the contents in a particular box. However, when it comes to researching the Echo newspaper, that is online, free, and available. You may pull up any copy and spend however much time reading each copy of the newspaper. Some newspapers, some editions are 2 pages, some are 4. There are 1 or 2 that are 6 pages. The partial index that I included gives you some information about what's in some of the various editions so that you can choose which which edition rather, you might want to look at. There is a link to the archive, a link to the newspaper, and a separate link to the partial index. When you look at the post that I did last week, there is an article that talks about the stork visiting Mr. and Mrs. Cicero Grant. Cicero Grant was my great uncle, my grand uncle. He married my grand aunt Armenia, and I put the article there, and then I posted in a collage. I did a picture of Cicero, a picture of my grand aunt Armenia, and the baby that she's holding is the only child that they had, William. And at the top of the collage post picture is a picture of William much later in his life. From oral history, which is another means of getting information about your family, I learned a lot about my grand aunt and uncle, having the pictures of them, but also being born at a time when my grandmother and some of her siblings were still alive. I listened to the stories that they told about their siblings, about their life, about the neighborhood, the community, and about their travels. Those are also ways in which you can get information to build your family history and to create your family tree. So these articles that I've shared today, as well as the collage, the pictures, these are all things that my ancestors collected and saved. I am very, very grateful that they did all this work. They didn't just save the information and say whomever in the future can figure it out. They made notes. So when I look on the backs of pictures, I know who the person is. And in most cases, I know when the picture was taken, where it was taken. The same is true in their letters. They're very descriptive about whatever is happening at that moment in time. And they wrote letters much like we do texting today. I may text many, many times a day to different people. I have letters where my grandmother wrote her soon to be husband on February 12th, and 2 days later she gets a letter from him. 2 days later she's answering him. The letters move slower than the text messages for sure. But my point is, they were constantly in touch with one another. They were constantly communicating. That being said, I think going back to the beginning when I talked about advocacy arena, the Echo is part of advocacy arena. It advocated for the well-being of Black Americans in Augusta, in Georgia, in the United States. It advocated for their health, their well-being, housing, education, whatever it is that we wanted. The Echo newspaper, like that of the Tribune and the Defender from Chicago, and many others whose names I don't know, that still exist today. There aren't many Black newspapers today. There aren't many newspapers today. Technology has made it such that we can just go online and get the information that we need. But there are still newspapers, and I would encourage you to go to the library or go online to the Library of Congress to look up your community or where your family is from to see what newspapers, magazines, and other kinds of local um, media might have been available to your ancestors or to you today. You can start your family history with your cell phone. I know you have lots of pictures there. I won't comment on what those pictures might be of because I wouldn't want you to comment on mine. I take pictures of a lot of different things that interest me that you might see in an essay sometime. In any case, I hope that you have enjoyed my presentation of the Echo, published between 1911 and up to about 1930. It stopped publication around 1914 and then started again. And again, thank you, Dee. Thank you, Soul Sister. Thank you, members of Advocacy Arena, for listening. And any questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them, if not now, because I'm sure there are others who want to speak about whatever their topic is for today. But don't hesitate to send me a DM or just put a question in the comments and I'd be happy to answer it, whether it's about this particular newspaper or about researching your history, your family history. And I'll add that the last thing that I did was I also did my DNA, well, 5 or 6 years ago, because I was looking to confirm what I already knew, and that is that my great grandfather and great grandmother were Native American, and I wanted to know what the percentage was. I was very happy to learn that my great grandfather was 100% Black Cherokee, as the designation is at the Library of Congress and the National Archive. But I grew up being told that when someone asked me, "Who are you, Mary Marshall?" I was not to answer just one thing. I was to say that I was Negro or colored. I can't remember which. Black definitely was not being used when I was in elementary school. You were either Negro or colored and Native American. And I could be specific because I knew that my great grandfather was Black Cherokee, but I also knew my grandfather, my mother's father, who was also Native American. And so I took all of this for granted, not really thinking about it, because after all, I was a child. I was just soaking up this information, but I'm glad I soaked it up. I remembered it. I have the documents. And I'm also happy to say that I've written volume 1 of my ancestors' history, and I'm now in the process of editing it slowly, but editing it, and hopefully by July I will have self-published the first edition. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marshall. I am so honored always when you share with us. You are walking history as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like we are blessed to be able to have you come in and share with us your history and also the importance of history in general, and to give us tips on how to curate and keep our history and the importance of preserving it. And I don't know if you guys recall, but I did a one-on-one interview with Dr. Marshall. It's a two-parter, 20 minutes each, and I have put part one. I'm trying to um, find part two and add that, but it's on the Advocacy Arena YouTube channel, and she talks a lot more about this. So you might want to re-listen if you've listened to it before to remind you, and if you haven't, it is a great interview that goes more in depth with some of the things that she has shared here today. And it just goes to show, I mean, I think we did this last year. And at that time, she was talking about the newspaper, but she hadn't gotten to the point where, it was sent to the archives and she was pulling information from the archives. And yes, I'm old enough to have grown up with, newspapers being a great resource of information for us, and libraries. And I'm so thankful that we have a librarian who comes in and shares with us in our community 2K. And I hope that at some point she might join us to, help us even further with tips on the things and resources that we can use, because there are so many today. It makes it so easy. We have these things, these phones in our hands, these computers that we walk around with that are so powerful. I would just encourage you all to use them. It's very easy to kind of take for granted the things that we are living, even in our own family, and things as, oh yeah, that's just so and so, or we know that. But I think that when we look back at it, we all have some very rich um, history within our own personal family. And I myself know that I do as well. So I look up to Dr. Marshall. I take her advice, and I'm trying to do some of the things that she has suggested that we do to preserve it, because I was blessed to um, grow up with all of my grandparents. I lost the first one when I was a young teen, my paternal grandfather. But, I was blessed to meet his father, who was born in the 1800s, and have a bit of that history. My father, I'm thankful, is still here with us. My mom is not. But again, just so much rich history I know within my own family, and I know that you probably have yours too. And I've shared a few other things in the nest, some historical things. You will see that I focus on military history a lot because I am a veteran. I think it's important, and I want to share that aspect of our history, our African American history, which is very rich within our military organizations. And I also share some quite a bit about nursing, because my mom was a nurse. So I'm always drawn to people in the healthcare arena. So I just want to kind of highlight a couple of people who I've just added in there, and one of them is General Hazel Johnson Brown, who was the first African American female general in the Army. And then another that you may not know, who is also a hometown, or a state Tennessee resident, and that is Command Sergeant Major Mildred Kelly, who is from the Knoxville area, and she was the first command sergeant, Black female command sergeant major in the U.S. Army. So I hope that you will take a look at these women and just add it to your arsenal of information. Go ahead, Dr. Mary.
Yes. Excuse me. There is one thing I wanted to add, which is very important. Don't be afraid or nervous about asking your elders for information. Many of them will say, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't know anything. And I'm going to say that that's not true. They know information, but may not know that they know information because for them, they lived it or they know about a family member who did live it. And I also want to suggest that you change the definition of elder, because an elder is not necessarily someone who's in their 70s or 80s. You may be 21 or 25, and your elder may be your 40-year-old cousin. Your 40-year-old cousin doesn't see him or herself as an elder or even a senior citizen. They just see themselves as being older than you. However, that person has experienced people older than themselves, and therefore they may know stories about your family that have been whispered. You know, I think there's a saying that, what's in the, I may not get it right, but what's in the dark will eventually come to the light. There are some stories that should remain in the dark because you want to protect the people who are living. You're safer revealing some stories after the person has died. But even then, you want to be mindful of what you share because it may reflect back on those who are living and create chaos or schism within the family. And that's not what you want to do. You hope that your story or the stories that you tell will bring the family together. And even what you have is on your cell phone is history. It's your history. So in writing your family history, you don't have to go back to the 1800s. You can start with today, February 12th, 2024. That can be your first day of this is what happened to me. I heard this awesome historian talk on advocacy, advocacy arena. I don't often toot my own horn, but we all have to start somewhere.
Exactly. You deserve to toot your horn, pat
Thank
yourself
you.
on the back, because you are walking history, and again, a gift to us. And I'm
I
so
want to stay young,
grateful.
D.
I know.
Thank you.
But you just said, the definition of elder is relative. So, and I didn't even call you an elder. I just said
Thank you.
you're a wealth of knowledge and information, and I'm honored to know you and call you my friend. But I feel that everyone should kind of recognize the importance of your being able to share your history, your experience, and your tips in the importance of preserving history. I think everyone can probably relate to that at this point, considering there is such an active effort to suppress our history being taught. And this isn't the first time that we have encountered this as African Americans in this country. There has always been these efforts. So it is very, very important. And I'm glad that we have this 1 month. And today, this year, we get an extra day to tout our history. And it's important for us to tell it because, when books are written and things like this, if they're not continually published or people don't have them, report to them, they go by the wayside, and after a couple of generations they're not even accessible, or people don't know about it. So it's important. And then we as Africans, our ancestry, coming from that continent, there is a rich oral history. So I think it's important for us, even if we are not you know, taking, measures to write books and these types of things, but to tell our stories. They're important. It's important for people to understand who they are, where they came from, and the achievements and accomplishments of their people, because I think that it really enriches us as individuals, as humans, as part of society. So I just want to thank you so very much, and I'm honored that Mickey has accepted the invitation to come up and share. As I said, she did share an experience of a visit that she made during this Black History Month. So I want to give her an opportunity to share with us. And then Karen, are you there, Mickey? Okay. She may have stepped away for a moment, because I know oftentimes folks are working and busy. So I'm going to first, I know that I think that my co host kind of raised her hand. Let me give her an opportunity. She may want to chime in on this, and then you, Karen, and then I'll check back in on Mickey.
I just wanted to say that it has been a delight getting to know you, Dr. Marshall, and taking all of your wise words into account, and realizing that we do need to understand that even if we don't have the wealth of artifacts, or preserved letters and postcards from our families, that we can start making a collection of our history, because we each and every one of us are living in history as it happens. And it's very, very important, and like you said, Misty, because of, especially because of what is going on with legislation, and the ideology to erase us from history as a people, or in our importance and what we've contributed. So, you know, you can't know the significance of your existence if no one's really hammering it down, and pointing it out to you. So when I think about it, and as I sat here and listened, I was like, oh yeah, that's something that I could do. I could write about where I was when this event happened, or when that event happened, because even if I have a conversation with my son, what's the likelihood that he'll remember it? Or what's the likelihood that anyone else from our family will know? And I've been blessed enough to have had some amazing, truly amazing experiences, and even meeting some individuals, that conversations that you just blow my mind. Gregory Hines. I got to meet Gregory Hines. I got to meet Sonia Sanchez. I got to meet Alice Walker. I've gotten to meet Danny Glover 3 times. I marched with him twice. It's just these things are, and as I sit here and I say it in this space, that's wonderful. But, my family, people that I will never meet, generations from me, may be really intrigued by that. And it's significant because of what I was able to do, and why I was able to meet them, and what we were trying to do together, uh, you know, uh, with the organizations we were associated with at the time, and, what we were able to accomplish as well. These are things that are significant in real ways. And I treasure you, not just because of who you are as a person, which is an amazing person, but your wisdom and your insight and your experiences. And I wish that I'd written down more. There's a lot of things that I remember, but there's a lot of things that I don't from just hearing my mom talking. While it's still, I can still grasp him, I think I should be writing that down so I can share with my family currently and moving forward, just because that may be a primary source of information come later on. We don't know. We have no idea. We hope and we fight for the preservation of our rights and our history and our stories and our experiences and our democracy. But there's another way to guarantee it as well, and that is to not just live history, but remember it, document it, and make note of it. So I appreciate all of your words, Dr. Marshall, and all of your efforts and everything that you do. It's just been an amazing experience to see you working, not just preaching or talking or speaking, but to actually be actively doing it. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely ditto to all of that. I'm going to go back to Mickey to see if she's available to speak. Are you there, Mickey?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Or good
Good
afternoon,
morning.
good
Yeah.
morning here. I'm just gonna say real quick, you know, we've been talking about history.
Okay, I'm going to drop out because I can't hear her. I'm going to come right back.
Okay, you go ahead, Mickey, and I'll take care of
Okay,
the.
can everybody else hear me?
I can hear you. Hmm.
Okay, cool. No, I was gonna say we've been talking about history, and it is Black History Month, and I had an opportunity to go see a photography exhibit of the civil rights movement this past weekend. And I posted some, I one kind of poster that featured John Lewis. I just had to send to Dee because, well, it's Dee, and we know how she loves John Lewis. So, but in that thread, I documented some of the other photos that I, kind of captured because we were allowed to take photos. And it talks to the history of the civil rights movement. And it was like, part of it was feeling like, we're back in the struggle again. But then the other part was very, very um, fortifying because we've been here there. We've done this. We know how to do this. We have faced worse. And when all we need to do is stop listening to noise and trash that people are telling us, get real information out there, and it starts with each of us. People took real risks in the civil rights era. And we're sitting up here, some of us don't want to be loud and proud about where we stand. And I'm going to go in on, and be out and loud and proud about where I stand politically because we need to be able to to impart our knowledge and our wisdom and convince people that a lot of what they're hearing is just basically a newfangled way to suppress their vote. And we just really kind of need to be, you know, we ain't new to this, but we need to continue to be true to it. And I gotta get ready to go to my office. But if anybody got any questions, I don't know if it's going to be traveling or not. I think it's just a local museum that put the exhibit on. I haven't heard anything about it traveling, but it was very impactful. We had a docent who was a nice little old lady who, she this is a largely a I believe the center is its origins are been supported by people who the Jewish community and Jewish faith, and I appreciate that the exhibit. This particular docent, we, some of us in the group had to hip her to what's going on now and provide, a little more background and information, because she knew, I guess, who was in the exhibit, and she goes, as if Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, and she's like, well, they didn't, she was the one out there, and I'm like, don't forget, Diane Nash, Dr. Mary, Dr. Dorothy Height, all these other women who have been also involved in the civil rights movement. There are some pictures, and I don't know if I'm going to post this one, but they, I don't. I may not have seen this one up close, but there are some pictures where there's Dr. King laid in his casket, and it's really impactful. And some pictures of of uh, of Coretta Scott with Rosa Parks, and it was just really kind of, it makes you think, because Bernice King is my sorority sister. We are not that far apart in age. She lost her dad to the struggle. That was her father, and it humanizes, the how we have how some people have sacrificed. And it kind of just makes me mad that so many people just take for granted their right to vote when people have sacrificed. And I don't think, people have that attachment anymore to the struggle. And we need to make that history very real for them. So that's kind of my thoughts. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that was, like I said, check out the thread. There's still more.
I'm looking forward to it, and I would agree with you because we are now in a different phase of that same continuing struggle. And as you said, to see and to relate to Dr. Bernice King in terms of being a sorority sister and thinking of her age and how these events of history affected her life. I mean, she was a child, but this was part of her life. And so I do think that that is important. And of course, I love it because I'm a history nerd, but I also, and of course, a big fan of advocacy and also photography. And I think that photography is a great storytelling tool. And I am grateful to anyone who has pictures to share. And I think that these are ways that we continue to tell the story, because sometimes, like we all lived through, George Floyd and many other such atrocities here in our country. But sometimes you can read about these things, but to see them um, on film or in pictures, it's quite different, and I think it evokes a different type of feeling that we can connect to. So I thank you all for your contributions and for just doing your part to continue to share our history, the importance of it, the relevance of it, and the connection of it to today's events. So thanks, Mickey. I appreciate you. And we're going to go next to Karen, and then we'll start to move into some of our, issues, current event issues and conversation. And I'm thankful again for all of you being here today. Please share and retweet the space. It is recorded. So if folks are sleeping in because of Super Bowl celebrations or at work and can't take part, it gives them an opportunity to partake in this great discussion as well. So, Karen, thank you for being here today.
Dee, thank you so much for sending the reminder this morning. It's been a little bit harried around here. My best friend's husband died January 29th, very suddenly. And she's been here in Tucson with us. She lives in Casa Grande. So I've had my best friend here for a while, and which was wonderful and healing for both of us. But it's so nice to come back into, getting out of the absolute grief. It's going to take a long time, but I thank you for inviting me in. You have the best spaces, and I always walk out of this feeling so refreshed and educated. I come out of here and I learn a lot. Um, it's significant for me because I am my 30th wedding anniversary is on the 18th, and I'm married to one of the finest men on this planet, and we have we have a lot of grandkids, and we have 6 kids of our own. Um, it's a busy family, and it's also very diverse because, of course, we are blended. We are blended racially, and we're also blended because we added children when we met each other. We already had kids. It's been, it's been. My dog is going nuts. I'm sorry about that out there. She's a German Shepherd, and she's very boisterous.
She
Um,
likes the
but I wanted to talk.
conversation.
She does. Chippa likes to make sure the whole neighborhood knows who she is. But I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Marshall. I heard what you said when you like to include your heritage, your whole heritage. And that has been my focus as being, grandma. It's like Michael is Poppy and I'm Grandma Poppy. And we have children from all different cultures and influences. And I mean, we've got such a colorful family, is what I like to call us, because our ancestry just spans the world. And we did our DNA too. And when I come into a space like this and I hear that there are amazing women like you, Dee, and Dr. Marshall, and Mickey, and Soul Sister, I mean, ladies, what you impact on my life is tremendous, because then I can pass that down to my granddaughters and my grandsons. And so they all can learn that we're a family of rich heritage, and that our heritages are to be respected and admired and celebrated. So the impact that you make doesn't just affect the African American community, it affects all of us. And it brings us back into remembrance of who we are as the human race. We're a race of people who've got the incredible capacity to just be invincible and amazing and creative. So, as a Karen and a ladybug and a gardener and a grandma, but speaking solely as a woman with a heart for her family. Um, Thank you, my sisters. Thank you so much for the education that I receive just sitting in a room listening to your great wisdom. I cannot thank you enough, and I wish I could give you a hug. The only thing I can send you right now is just praise, glory, and stand true, because you're making a huge difference. And I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.
Oh, Karen, thank you so very, very much. You are always just such a lovely, kind voice, and it is affirming to know that the work and efforts that we partake or undertake are having an impact. It really means a lot, and I appreciate you coming up to say that and to share that. And I want to give Soul Sister and Dr. Marshall an opportunity to respond if they would like to. And then I'm going to start introducing some topics that are of the current event part of our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Karen. I just want to say that it does mean quite a bit because, your words continue to keep me motivated to make sure that I'm delivering good news. And when I say good, I'm not saying like it's always happy. I mean, accurate and factual, and I do take time to do it. And I did learn from the best, Miss D. I'm not the I'm not the thread writer, that the thread master as she has become, and but I do value making sure that people have good information to learn from, to think about, to trigger some kind of thought later on. Um, it's uh, it's quite. Um, I'm quite grateful. I'm humbled by your words. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Dr. Marshall, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate that my presentation today and anything I've said in the past has made a difference in your life. And I thank you for sharing so openly your experiences. And like you said, I learn a lot from this space, from everyone who speaks. I know so much more about politics than I've ever known. In fact, sometimes I ask myself, what world was I living in before I came into advocacy arena? Because I thought I knew, and whatever I thought I know now that it was just on the surface. So I have learned how to expand my own horizons. And when you talk about humanity and the multifaceted and colorism, not colorism, but the blended family. My family now, I mean, we are past and present a family of multi ethnicities and multi races. One of the things that I am focused on now is learning more about the Asian and Asian Pacific communities because my family includes Asian and Asian Pacific members as well as Hispanic or Latino. And so I am expanding my horizons, which simply means that my family is becoming more human, if you will. We're human, but a lot of times we focus solely on our little community that we're a part of, our basic family unit, without having taken the time to look and see what is my basic family unit. It isn't exactly what we thought. And so thank you so much for sharing your response to not only to me, but to all of those who speak in advocacy arena. It's such a great place to be on a Monday afternoon.
Well, thank you so very much. And again, I host the space. I have the great pleasure of having a fabulous co host, but it is the contributions of voices like yours, Karen, and Dr. Marshall, and many others who are frequent contributors, and sometimes, just these one offs that really make it, I think, so wonderful. And I never take it for granted. I am grateful to all who come and actively participate by speaking and presenting information, but also by the people who come and listen, actively listen, because, that is very important too. And I recognize that we're having this in the middle of the day because that works for my schedule. But I recognize that a lot of people are working, busy doing other things. So I'm also appreciative of you, taking time out, multitasking, and doing what you can to be a part of the space. It really does mean a lot. It doesn't go unnoticed. I assure you, I see you and appreciate each and every one of you. And with that, I'm just going to kind of highlight some stories that I've been looking at, and we can decide where we'll dive in a little bit
Oh,
deeper.
Misty, can I talk about my Hattie Canty, please, before we
Sure.
go? Yeah. Oh,
Yes, yes.
thank you. Thank you. I just didn't want to let the day pass without giving you another labor historical black woman. And she says she did an oral history interview, and one of the quotes, which there were many great ones, but one of the quotes was, "At one point, I got so involved in the union, I thought, now, Hattie, at some point, you've got to separate the civil rights movement from the labor movement. But you can't do that. There is no way you can do it. Anytime I fight for anything in this labor movement, it benefits me in the civil rights movement." And I just found that so compelling because it's something that I say all the time. It's something that we union members believe and live and fight for each and every day. So, just to give you a little history, Hattie Canty was born in St. Stephen's, Alabama in 1933, and she went on to be known as one of the greatest strike leaders in this country's history. She and her husband and 10 children settled in Las Vegas. I am kind of glossing over that early history, but the articles are posted in the Nest, and you can dive into those and learn much more about her. But they settled in Las Vegas, where Canty was focused on raising her kids, and then her husband died. So then it was up to her to then support the 8 children who were still living at home. So in 1975, at the age of 41, she went to work at Maxim Hotel. And it was already a unionized workplace by the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. And as a union member, Canty, of course, got great benefits, health benefits, a pension, and above minimum wage pay. It was amazing. So she kept getting involved. She got more and more involved. If she wasn't working or caring for her children, she would spend her days working for the union or being on a picket line if there were picket lines that were going on at the time. She learned early on the connection between advocating for workers' rights and civil rights. And one of her greatest accomplishments was helping to establish the Culinary Training Center in 1993. This is now known as the Culinary Academy of Las Vegas. She had been elected as Local 226's president in 1990 and was the first Black female and guest room attendant to have earned this position. And not without its challenges. She was arrested 6 times for her work for labor causes. She had been elected to the executive board prior to being the president in 1984, and she staged a successful 75-day strike for better pay, health benefits, and higher positions for Black people in the industry. In 1991, 550 culinary workers at the Frontier Hotel walked off the job over unfair labor practices, and their strike ended 6.5 years later. And she helped guide them through it and keep that membership together. This is why she is called um, one of the greatest strike leaders of her time, because she maintained her membership. She won her reelection as president twice by landslide votes in 1993 and in 1996, and she died in 2012. And she leaves such a rich history and a stamp not just on Las Vegas, but on the culinary union as a whole. So I just wanted to highlight her. I know it's just a little quick bit, and I did a very short spiel on her. But there's a lot of information, and if you have the opportunity to listen to the recording, I suggest you do. She's just amazing, um, and it's just important for us to remember. that labor rights and civil rights and human rights go hand in hand always. It can't be taken apart. She said, "The union taught me how to fight for what I needed and what I had, and if it was something I wanted, how to go after it." So I hope we all remember Hattie Canty. Whenever you go to a hotel, whenever you're visiting Las Vegas, whenever you're thinking about, these everyday domestic type workers in the hotel and entertainment industry, I want you to remember how hard they work. And she said one of the greatest things that she had accomplished was, here she was, a maid in a hotel. She was able to own a home. She was able to pay her taxes on that home, buy a car, and put her kids through college. So, I know that people in this room um, don't take for granted workers like that. But I want to make sure that you also share that with others so that they don't take those workers for granted. People are working hard every single day. Um, and yes, not everybody is a union member, but the unions always lift up the entire industry. And so, you never know. You never know. That Starbucks worker could be fighting for a union in their workplace. And as the bankers, there are so many people trying to organize right now. And I know I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you ever see any information about a union and any way to support them in your local area, I advise you to. It not only enriches the lives of the union members, but it will definitely enrich the community in your life as well. Thank you. And now we can go on. I'm sorry. I just wanted to highlight her really quickly.
No, that's fine. That's great. And I think it is always certainly this is prime time to highlight her. And I love the quote that you shared of her because we talked about it before. How when unions achieve rights, yes, it is for their workers, but all workers, all Americans benefit from the gains that they make. So, absolutely, no worries at all there. So, here are some top stories. I know everyone has been aware of the Thursday special counsel's report on President Biden's classified documents case and how scandalous his verbiage was in that. So we can open that up for discussion. But first, I want to ask all of you to um, lift Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in prayer. His family, he is in the hospital again, and we now know that he had a procedure in January for cancer, had a setback and was okay. And apparently now he has had another setback. And so I'm trying to stay abreast of what's happening with him, with his health. But, also, he is the Secretary of Defense. So at this time, the deputy secretary, Catherine, it's a female, I cannot remember her last name, has been given his duties. So just keeping the Department of Defense in prayer and the leaders, because there are a lot of things going on and they are very much an integral part of working these things out and working on them. And I too know that there was a meeting in the EU that he was to be attending on Tuesday. I can't remember exactly. I'll get more details and post it in my timeline. But I'm sure that the deputy secretary will attend in his absence. but just really keeping an eye on that because things are still very fluid around Ukraine, the funding, and certainly the Israel Hamas war. So that's one thing. The special counsel report, and we talked about it. I tweeted about it. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was Iowa has written a letter to the I can't remember the State Department. Anyway, it's regarding the Koch brothers. Basically, they wrote to the DOJ and the FTC, flagging the Koch's $3 billion deal around the purchase of a fertilizing plant. And I think that we should pay attention to this and keep up with it because, again, it could have a significant impact on farmers across the country. And we do know that they are libertarians of, and they are about privatizing and making profit of everything. So that's a story that I want us to stay on top of, and apparently we'll be getting more air because they have written to the DOJ and the FTC to take a look at that. So, going to be following what goes on there.
Yeah, and with a monopoly like that, think of the destruction that they could do to workplace safety regulations, OSHA, all of these standards that protect the workers. It's dangerous in a way that, and this is something that in the past this country has stood against. So, you know, I hope that I hope that
Yeah.
we don't see this come to fruition.
Right, because we know that part of the libertarian and now the far right and Project 2025, which, I said we're going to talk about, this is very much a part of their agenda. And we can see with the Boeing company, the railroad derailments that we've had, how deregulation has increased the safety or the lack of safety for workers, certainly, but for our communities as well. And I think I had talked to you personally, so sister, about an incident. I'm going to be writing about it, but it's a good time kind of to mention it. But there has been an increase in workers dying in an industry that is not following regulations, and it's called oh gosh, I can't think it. It's some type of issue that affects their heart and lungs, and these young people, they are mostly Latin Americans who work in the industry,
Oh
and this is
yes,
around the man-made granite. Uh,
yeah.
that
It wasn't silica; it was something else. I can't. Yeah,
silicosis
yeah.
yes, that's what it was called. It was silicosis, I think. But what it reminded me of when I saw the story was that in the old days, before regulatory agencies and the scientific knowledge around the harm, I watched old videos on Victorian era inventions and the dangers that they posed in our home, like gas, gas lights, and but asbestos. And this is what that story reminded me of because, the tendency is when something new is invented, of course, during the industrial age, they were putting it in everything. And there was asbestos in tile, there was asbestos in everything, even radon. I mean, they used it on our watches and all sorts of things before they knew the harm that it could cause and before regulatory agencies and things were put into place. But, we're past that. We know this. And so now we have, a industry, and there are OSHA standards, but they are not being enforced in these places where likely many of these people are migrants. So instead of working in fields, they are working, in a shop, producing this granite for, and we have this big, um, uh, kind of obsession now with flipping houses and these types of things. And so I want you guys to be aware of this story, and I'm going to keep following it and reporting on it. But this is just another example of why regulations are important. They save lives, they save workers. So the other thing was that the Democrats are introducing a bill to drop the taxes on Social Security benefits. Woohoo, that's good. And they'll probably get pushback on that. And then the gun violence, because I'm sure many of you heard about the mega church of Joel Osteen having basically a shootout in the sanctuary. And it's just very disturbing that this person came in with the child and did this. There's like no place safe. Some of the places that we always thought of as being very safe are no longer, like schools and churches. And the fact that we had the former guy bragging at his NRA speech over the weekend about him not doing anything about gun violence or regulations for 4 years. I'm very proud of that, as he is also proud of the overturning of Roe, and for like the special counsel to put the little quip in about President Biden's age, and of course media running to kind of both sides these things is not missed on us who are paying attention, because there is no comparison to these two men, except that they're both in their 80s or around that. But in all other respects, they are total opposites. And this administration is working and doing everything they can to address gun violence. And of course, the legislation that they are working to pass is being shot down by the right wing politicians there, because, again, here in my own state, a red trifecta, we had a horrific incident of gun violence in a school that is largely a Republican area. It was a Christian school. The principal and one of the teachers who were killed were literal friends, not acquaintances, but friends of our governor. And he really didn't speak out until like maybe 3 days after. He eventually called a special session, but because they didn't want to address it this happened in like March of last year, they didn't want to address it. So he called a special session. But what they did take time to address before they closed the last session was passing a law to protect the gun manufacturers. So again, this push and emphasis that they have on protecting corporations, as in Citizens United, corporations are people, and so these are the people that they are trying to protect. The former guy passed his tax bill when he was in, which gave forever tax cuts to the rich people, but some people, regular citizens who may have gotten a little relief initially, have found that relief disappearing. And this is the year where it totally goes away, and that was intentional. So we need to understand who's responsible for what and who's doing what. And I see Geechee has come up, and I want to get into chapter 4 a little bit of the Project 2025, because it deals with the Department of Defense. And in one of the former guy's rants, he basically talked about militarizing the National Guard to help with his deportation efforts. And this should scare the bejesus out of anyone that he wants to weaponize our military in such a way. And this is also part of the core plan, the blueprint of Project 2025. But I'm looking forward to hearing from Geechee. So I'm going to go to him and then I'll kind of pick back up with some of these things.
Hola, hola, everybody. Hope everybody's
Uh,
doing well today. How are you, Dee?
Good, good. Glad to have you.
How are you, soul sister?
I am surviving. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I can't complain. There's two things I want to talk about today, and then I'll continue to listen. Because I want to really hear your part about Chapter 4, Project 25. The first part of it is, because I was the pulmonologist last week, I got to sit on the bed and breathe, and then monitor my breathing for like an hour and a half. So while they were doing that, I was bored, and I looked up on my iPad. Polling as it related to the three people I can remember where the age of them was an issue with the voters, and that was with Ike when polling was relatively new and used in that force, Reagan and Biden. And the issue of age never went away for Ike. It never went away for Reagan, and it may not go away for Biden. But that doesn't mean they can't be reelected. It's just that they need moments to show that they're still spry. So I see a lot of the back and forth of, oh, stop saying this, stop saying this. There's really nothing that we can do until Biden himself makes an opportunity or has an opportunity to show that he's spry. For Reagan, I think most of us know that. That was when he made that smart quip towards Mondale in the debate, saying that I won't take advantage of your youth, and that went over well. For Nixon, it was just basically laughing in regards to what proposal that came out of the Senate that Adlai Stevenson was promoting, and just laughing it off. And the media ran with that, and that was basically the end of Adlai Stevenson in his second venture against President Eisenhower. So Biden's going to have that opportunity, but there's just really nothing that we can do because the voters that feel like that he's too old aren't paying attention to politics at all. They paid attention to the Super Bowl yesterday, but they're not paying attention to politics at all. They pay attention to FBI and the Law and Order franchise. They don't pay attention to politics at all. They know all the true crime shows. They don't pay attention to politics at all. But that will happen around Labor Day, and then that gives us a huge opportunity to talk and speak to voters, to reach out to voters and change their mind. News viewership is in decline and is crashing more. I don't know how to fix that, but there was another thing I did this weekend. I watched local news, something I normally do not do. I watch national news, international news, inundated with like military news, but I just really have little interest in what's going on around me because I just figure everything around me is fine. I'll know if things are bad. But if you watch local news, I swear to goodness, it is the worst thing in the history of the world. It's always shooting and stabbing. It could be a shooting and stabbing that's not even in the media area. It's like the first thing that's blasted over and over again. And then it's like four woe is me economic stories that have nothing to do with like the actual economy, but it is just like so depressing. I don't know if that's like the case everywhere, but like the local news I watched this weekend was
It is.
okay.
It is, Geechee.
It would make me think that we're living in the terror dome. Like I need to turn to saying, we don't need another hero because the Thunderdome, excuse me. It is depressing. It is really, really depressing. So that's my part on that. And the second thing, a little bit more upbeat. Um, I speak with my boyfriend almost every day about vacations because it's especially when it's miserable weather outside, and it's miserable weather outside, and we talk endlessly about it. And I was talking to my sisters, and I was like, "Well, we should go to hang out at one of the beaches we hung out as a kid." I'm like, "No, those were old people beaches." And then it was like a reminder of some of the black beaches that because of Jim Crow and because of slavery that we used to go to not be banned from the beaches, so on and so forth. And it just made me remind myself of I don't go to Daytona Beach that often anymore. I've grown out of that age bracket, but I used to go to Daytona Beach and it was a very black beach. Highland Beach, which is in Maryland, that was founded by Charles Douglas, who was Frederick Douglass's son. America Beach, which is the beach we used to go to when I was a kid, which is on Amelia Island in Florida. Most of these beaches are actually in Florida, which is a shame that DeSantis is the governor there. Fort Walton Beach, Ferdinand Beach, Sag Harbor, which is in New York, Bruce's Beach, which is in California. I didn't even know about this beach until like 3 years ago, and all these news stories. And then Martha's Vineyard, which I think is boring and overrated, but that we have an opportunity during the summer, even if that means that you go somewhere down the block or somewhere out of your county or somewhere out of the state, that we get an opportunity to relax, relate, and vacay. Even if it's like one day away from your home and one day away from your job, I pray that everyone is blessed with that this upcoming year because everybody needs rest and relaxation. And I'm praying for rest and relaxation for everybody in this space. That's all I have today. I'm rather brief today, but just going to listen to what else has to be said today. And I love your space.
Oh, well, thank you. And we always love when you come in and share with us. I do have another speaker, someone new who has come up. So welcome to Advocacy Arena. Give you an opportunity to chime in on what we have discussed so far. And then I'm going to pick up with some deeper insights on Project 2025. So welcome, Deb. How are you? Can you hear us? Deb? Okay. Um, well, I am going to move on. She may need to drop down to listener and come back. But one of the articles that I have posted is from Ms. Magazine. It was published on the 8th, and it's titled Project 2025, The Rights Dystopian Plan to Dismantle Civil Rights and What It Means for Women. And it's a great article. It's kind of a long article, but I think it's worth reviewing and reading because I don't think, as much as we talk about it in here, I don't think there's still a large population of the country who is aware of it and the significance and the danger that it poses to our democracy. But the main writers, um, creators. Of course, this isn't a new project. It's just kind of an expansion of an old project. This is Project 2025 is an expansion of the Mandate for Leadership, which the Heritage Foundation created and gave to Reagan. And we understand some of the things that he did. And we can go back further to find out in some of the other earlier spaces we talked about that the Mandate for Leadership is really a dusted off and revised version of the 1930s project called the Conservative Manifesto. And this was spearheaded by William F. Buckley. And these are the kinds of things that happen. This is the white backlash that we get whenever there is advancements made toward equity and those types of things in our country. And this Project 2025 is no different. And some of the pushback and some of the things that we're hearing, it's not, yes, it may be about his age, but it's also definitely has to do with our vice president and this fear of blackness in power. And the three guys who are responsible for, this version of the white backlash mandate, Paul Dans, Spencer Cretin, and Troop Hemingway. And they all worked in the Trump administration. Dans worked in the Office of Personnel Management. Troop was also part of the personnel policy operation. And Spencer is the director of programs for Freedom Works, which is another conservative organization supposedly created to break down barriers between Beltway insiders and grassroots America, so they say. But again, their agenda is basically to roll back civil rights and to establish a an authoritarian type of government that puts a lot of power in the hands of the president. And I was looking, the part of the reason I skipped to chapter 4, because the former guy was talking about the militarization of our National Guard. And yes, this is in there and part of their plan and their blueprint. And the thing that I want people to understand and to not forget is like, this isn't just some talking points or an essay about their ideas. This is a blueprint, almost 900 pages, and it has been dusted off and revised over time, going back to the 1930s. To push this far right wing kind of agenda and to meet the moment and the times that we are in now. And one of the things that they are definitely harping and focusing on, they use a lot of different tools. It's kind of the death of our democracy by a thousand cuts. The DEI efforts are very much a part of their plan, and some of the red states have kind of gotten a head start on this. And one of the, they have now, I think it's up to around 600 different organizations that are helping them in this area. But the guy who wrote this particular chapter, Christopher Miller, I'm assuming he has no, he's not, biologically related to Stephen Miller, but they definitely are very connected in their ideology. When I was reading the story from Esquire, because he wrote a book, he was actually he was the acting Secretary of Defense during January 6th. And remember, toward the end, the former guy basically had no appointees to the heads of these agencies. He had all acting people because, in part, and this is his plan going forward, because these certain positions like the Secretary of Defense and these types of positions have to be approved by Congress, but their deputies do not. So this is how he escapes this. And also, in part of Project 2025, like I said, it's not just a talking paper, it's not just an idea, it's a blueprint. And it is a blueprint that has an organization that is training them and also vetting them. They have what they call a presidential academy, where they are training people, and some of the training is online. They are providing certificates for them so that this idea of this Schedule F, you've heard me talk about it before, but this is their plan to basically get rid of a lot of people who are civil service workers, and many of them would be in the Department of Defense. I was a veteran, active duty, and I was also a member of the civil service of the Department of Defense. Okay, so they want to get away with this and fire people. Civil service workers have a lot of protections, and they want to take away those protections, and they want to bring in an army of loyalists, loyalists that have been through the training and understand what the mission is. And so, sister, I see you had your hand up, so I'm going to let you go ahead. And then T-Bug and Mickey both have come back up. So go ahead. So, sister, T-Bug, and then Mickey.
I just wanted to say that I think it's really important that people recognize that many of the plans in Project 2025 and also, especially in regards to women, well, all of it really. Um, Many of those plans, date back to Black codes that might not be using the same words, might not be using the same way to promote it. But this is, it's very, very much, even the whole indoctrination of Christianity, bringing God back into the school. This is very, very, people need to be alarmed in a way that I can express. And I think that it is something that when you're having discussions with someone, especially when we're speaking Black people in our communities, and, well, I survived, or I'm going to withhold my vote, or I don't know. It really, really needs to be stressed that, you will be touched because of the way that these laws were written in the past. They can be reinvented to suit them today in the same way Black codes were, and we will be affected in a much different way than people who are not in, who don't share our same community, who aren't the same race. So I really want to highlight that. I don't think people are recognizing that it's like you said, they dusted it off and they reinvented it for 2025, 2024. And we see the legislation that's being put forth in many state houses. And of course, even to the fact of, rolling back, labor laws for children. This is not going to end well. We will not survive it the way people believe that they will. And to just say that it's, I think we got to even say something even more forceful than the word plan, because this is something they're going to implement immediately. So I just really wanted to point that out. That's all. And I wanted to make sure I didn't forget it. So that's why I had my
Okay,
hand up. Thank you. I mean,
no
we're talking about a
problem.
police state when they're talking about the immigration. That's a police state too.
Uh,
That's another big thing. But anyway, I'm sorry. I don't want to
no,
throw people off.
No, but you're absolutely right, because the original plan that we can trace this back to until I can find another earlier iteration is, a result of Reconstruction laws that they didn't want to adhere to, and it was after World War II, or around that period of time, when when our society was called the liberal awakening. But basically, the world had been through a lot. And we had also gone through a depression, and it was them then pushing back against the Green New Deal. That was their pushback. So now we have a president who has passed a lot of progressive policies, and this is their pushback. This is the white backlash that comes when they don't think that people should have social safety nets. And even back in the 1930s, they felt like that's something that should be handled and addressed by religious organizations. The well-being of people, like that did not have the means. they were against unions, and they also felt like we didn't need certain industries and infrastructure, that the private sector should be the ones taking care of this. And there is a lot of that private sector talk in this Department of Defense around contracts and that sort of thing as well. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And since we have three folks up, I'm going to stick a pause in the Project 2025 and go to T-Bug, Nikki, and Joseph. And I'm glad you guys came up. So go ahead, T-Bug. How are you?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm doing good. I come in late on Mondays because I'm in a PTSD therapy group. So I have to come in a little late on Mondays, but yeah,
Well, we're glad you're here.
yeah, I was a little vocal this weekend about my excitement about meeting Pam Grier this weekend. So Soul Sister is like, oh, you should probably talk about it. uh,
Yes, well, tell us about it, because she is an icon in the community for sure, for sure. So I'm glad. I'm jealous. I told you. What an awesome. So it was a viewing at a theater that you went to,
yeah,
was it?
so there's a nonprofit called Hollywood Theater, and they also own Movie Madness, which is a place I used to go to in my 20s, and you could get anything you can imagine. Out of print videos you'd have to put $100 down for. There was always film students there that you could get recommendations from on all kinds of stuff. And it's just a community of people that love film. And they actually kind of met my partner because of that theater. I was helping organize Black History Month one year, and I was trying to reimburse his coworker for a Maya Angelou documentary ticket because they do a Black film series during Black History Month too. And he said, "Oh, you should meet my friend. He likes techno music like you do." And then a few weeks later, I made friends, and the rest is
And the
history.
rest is history. Okay. I love it.
That is
Yeah,
so sweet.
but this has been part of me trying to get out of the house. I've been unemployed for a little bit and just trying to brush up on certificates and things and get a job that I actually like. I have severance through May, so I'm good. But I've been trying to just get out of the house and interact with people because I get agoraphobic kind of. And I've seen Pam Grier comes every year, and I thought, oh, that would be so cool. I didn't really know much about her. I'd seen her in the L Word and some other things, and Jackie Brown, the Tarantino movie. But my dad used to watch the Shaft movies when I was a kid, but I never got to see her films, and so I was super excited about going. And my partner was like, seemed even more excited than I was. Ben was like, I love her. She's amazing. So yeah, we went, and I'm not fully disabled, but I have spine issues. So now I'm putting my needs first and making sure I get seating that's, not necessarily ADA, but easy to get in and out of without, pulling someone's hair in front of me. So I got seats. We went and had sushi across the street, and then we got seats. We got in line around 6 o'clock, and the showing was at 7. We walked in the door from the line, and some guy just comes up to us and says, "Hey, would you like some signed records by Pam Grier?" And we were like, "Yes, thank you." And I just thought, well, maybe they're just records that they found because there's a lot of old record stores right nearby that she just signed. When she came out at the end of the film, she said, "These were my old records." And one of them was the Chambers Brothers, "You Got the Power to Turn Me On." And the other was Isley Brothers, "I Got to Find Me One." So they were just singles, but it was just like, I was just blown away when she said, "Oh, these are my records when I was, from the time I was about 13 to 18, and I just wanted to share them with everyone." And I just thought, wow, that's so kind. Um, but yeah, she was extremely hilarious, very open about sex and how her sex life is getting better. And she has a ranch in Colorado with horses, and she helped a lot of people during the SAG-AFTRA strike because they were stuck with their herds of cattle that they use for westerns, and didn't want to bring them back to their home state in case the strike was over. So she let people come and graze, let their goats and all kinds of cattle graze on her big farm out there. Um, she did talk about um, when she was younger, she was sexually assaulted at 6 years old, and during that situation, she also was injured on her head, and she said that she started stuttering. So um, her father was in the Air Force. They moved around a lot, and she has like a very diverse background and ancestry. She said she's basically like African, Latinx, Asian, all kinds of things, indigenous. And she said that there was some shame with the family and wanting to help her heal. And so a lot of the healing that she did was her grandpa in Wyoming would have her come out and he would teach her how to hunt and how to fish, how to make flies, and basically told her she could be independent and not need a man um, to help her. And she said that she had a stock horse that her family had that she would just put her head on the horse and it helped her with healing. And I started crying because I've got some personal experience with assault, and I got embarrassed because I didn't want to distract anyone. I was in the front row. She elaborated on some other stuff that happened in her life, and that really just got me all of a sudden. And she was funny and made you cry in the next second. But she said that she got a lot of hostility when she did Foxy Brown and Coffee because of the violence and the sex and things like that. And she said that, and I'm just quoting her opinion was that she didn't feel like anyone cared about the blaxploitation or called it that until it was a woman doing that. She said she didn't see them complaining about it when it was a man. And she said that actually doing those roles was a way for her to feel empowered and heal herself as well. Doing martial arts gave her confidence. And she said, before that, she came out to UCLA Film School and was working 5 jobs at a time. And she said that she got to work for Bobby Womack as a backup singer, and he introduced her to Stevie Wonder. And so she made her living doing a lot of backup singing while she was in film school before she got to acting. She said that she's explained to modern female stars about how when she was in the Women in Prison films, that she did all her stunt work and jumped out of an airplane into a rice field, um, and how she's proud of herself for all the stuff she's done. Um, and she said now with her ranch in Colorado, she has horses. She still uses that for healing. And she also invites families with people that have trauma and special needs to come out and ride horses and insists that the parents get on even if they think they don't need help. And in addition to that, she makes her own moonshine, and she likes collard green martinis with the pot liquor. Um, yeah, and she was really funny. She made us laugh all the time, especially when she talked about being 75 and having a 3-day orgasm and making the interviewer blush. Sorry if I'm going too far with my story, but yeah, then it was done, and she was right off the stage, right in front of me, and everyone started rushing her with her things to autograph. And I don't normally like to get attention or go up to people like that. But she just moved me so much. And there was like a few people in front of me, and everyone was just kind of talking to her as she was signing. And I just said, I was just like, I just really appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm a survivor, and I just really appreciate, what you're doing and to help everyone. And she said, well, Gloria Steinem was my mentor, and she taught me that I need to love myself first. And my mantra is, I love me more, and I love me more than my trauma. And she grabbed my hand, and I didn't expect that. She just grabbed my hand, and um, her hands were like beautiful and soft, and she was so sweet. And I didn't wash my hand. It was my left hand, which is my non-dominant hand. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And one I'll never forget. I also got her autograph poster. I paid to get her autograph poster, so I was thinking about what I want. What do I want to put behind my desk?
Oh, what
uh,
a beautiful story
yeah,
and experience.
Isn't
Like,
that an
again,
amazing story? I loved it.
yes, exactly. And I am so jealous because she is someone like that I grew up with. She was kind of an icon during my teen years and things. And yes, I'm not surprised that your partner wasn't very excited because I don't know of any man who is not excited by Pam Greer. She's
yeah.
beautiful.
She
Um,
she likes to connect with everybody in the room too. There was a guy sitting right next to us because it was only a three seat row, and she grabbed him and started dancing to Earth, Wind, and Fire. Didn't know him. He was super excited. And then before she came out, she had the interviewer say, "I want everyone to know this is a party. And I want everyone to have fun." And she kept addressing people in the audience that she knew from the film
oh,
industry and saying how much she loves them and what they do and that they're artists. And so it was just a really positive, fun experience. And I just didn't expect it to be as magical as it was, but I feel
oh,
very lucky.
wow. And I thank you for sharing it with us because we get to enjoy it vicariously through your telling of it, and I'm so happy for you that you had such a wonderful experience with such a wonderful lady, and I'm also glad that you um, kind of address some of her more three-dimensional aspects, the fact that she has a ranch and that she is an advocate and all of these other things, because she's much more than an actress or the bombshell that we knew her to be when I was growing up. She is really truly an awesome person, so thank you for coming in and sharing that bit of living Black history
Thank you.
with us.
Mhm.
And so next we've got Mickey, then Joseph, and Dr. A. I'm so glad he was able to make it in here because I've asked him to speak to us today. He's been doing some great spaces around Black history, and today he's a little late because he was doing his civic duty, getting training to be an election worker, and I'm so excited for him. So, Mickey, Joseph, and then Dr. A.
Hi, everybody. I'm just briefly coming back. I posted something in the whatever we're calling it today, the Jumbotron, or up on our little nest, whatever, about the lung disease issue and silicosis. Being that I work in the construction industry, there are very strict guidelines about how you are supposed to cut stone. When you see people out there and they're just taking a little saw and they're cutting stone and they don't have like a full respirator on, like not just a little mask, but a real, it looks like a real respirator looks like a gas mask. Okay. And the stone is also supposed to be cut wet to keep the silica down to a minimum.
To keep the particles, yes, I read
Yes,
that, and they're not doing that
they're
in a
not.
lot of these shops.
No. And, when you hire around the way folks who don't want to, sometimes, yeah, I get it, it's less expensive. But when you see people know that they're really risking their lives, this piece was just like the number of people who are needing lung transplants.
Like
Eh,
40-year-old men. It broke my heart when I read the story, and then I started digging more. And they've outlawed this stone in Australia. Like they can't
yeah,
manufacture it anymore.
I, it's hard, I guess I would, because it's not just quartz, engineered quartz. It's a lot, it's natural, some natural stones too. So I'm hoping the US will kind of go after the violators, but if that doesn't work, yeah, we may need to start outlawing some products, because who's going to take care of these people's families? You know, I know a lot of them are either recent immigrants, they might be undocumented, and that's why they're not saying anything, but it's like, these people, They have kids and they're dying so young. It's horrible.
And dying from their work. Like they were just, I
Right.
mean, none
Uh,
of them were expecting to have a lung transplant because of the kind of work that they were doing. It just,
Yeah, we
it's
need to do
like,
more education to so that people in the communities know, hey, this is what you need, and if you're going to work in this industry, at a minimum, this is what you need.
absolutely. And I'm glad that the story is starting to gain more traction. I found a story from 2022, but I recently saw one. I can't even remember. Likely it was CBS This Morning because that's one of my go to watches, where they interviewed the a lot of young men. Like I said, most of them below 50 years old. And it was just heartbreaking to me. And it just took me right back to, like I said, these Victorian era inventions where, this was before we knew and before we had regulations, but we're not there anymore. And like this to me is almost kind of like intentional, like these people, the workers are throwaway. So it takes me back to Soul Sisters, labor efforts and union
Yeah,
um, efforts, like how critical they are and how much they're fighting against it because, that takes too much money. That costs,
yeah.
more money.
It doesn't happen as much on larger commercial jobs because there's such a there's a lot of reporting that goes on, particularly for public works jobs. But man, in the residential construction, yeah, those guys are getting, you know, they're getting taken advantage of, and it's really sad. So I think the more we're all aware and know what to look for, and to let people know that, yeah, you're saving money, but it ain't cool. And it's not just the engineered quartz. There are a bunch of other stones. If I find my um the actual list from my OSHA training one day, I will pop in and post it. But I have to go back to my OSHA certification and look at the full list of um materials that contribute, that cutting contributes. It's not just engineered quartz. There are a bunch of other things, a bunch of
Well,
other type of stone materials too.
Well, thank you so much for coming and adding some more depth to that story because it's definitely one I am going to be continuing to follow and maybe reaching out to you to ask questions because I know this is your industry.
Yeah,
So appreciate you coming to add that. It was just so heartbreaking. And again, like we see certain states like Arkansas and Florida already rolling back child labor laws and things, just,
yeah. But this is
uh,
liberal Los Angeles,
I
and
know, which was very, very heartbreaking. And I just see it kind of as greed, as
yep,
like you said, probably smaller shops and things that are not doing the large commercial work where they have to have these reports and things um, that, like these, small contractors and stuff are using cheap labor and not following good practices in the use and the people just wanting to work and regardless of what people say or whatever, most of these immigrants, they just want to work and feed their families, and they're hard workers, and they're the ones who are doing construction work and these other types of things, migrant, the field laborers and those types of things, and they shouldn't have to die
Yeah.
to provide food for their family.
It's important to remember that many of those State Department, Labor Department, um, they're not funded. So you really don't have the people, the manpower to enforce or to double check. And I think that that's adding
The
to a lot of things that are slipping through the cracks. I mean, and they want it that way. They being the Republicans, they want it that way. Because it's less oversight, less regulation, and that's their goal anyway. So, we have to really remember that that's also part of the plan. And so when people are used to not being serviced then it becomes, well, what good are they anyway? I never saw, any improvement or any protection, blah, blah, blah. So it's purposeful, it's like breaking on purpose. You've said it so many times, Misty. So it's really a sad situation, because even it just goes to show you that even in a liberal state like California, workers are not going to be guaranteed to be safe. And it wouldn't be something that you would normally attribute to that state. And here we are.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned too that, the department's not being funded, because another area that I tend to look at that I know is liking and funding and inspectors to go and ensure that, people in their industry are doing the things that they're supposed to do, is the nursing home industry. Like there are many states, Kentucky is one, and there is a Western state that escapes me at the moment, who have a proliferation of negligence and harm being done to folks in nursing homes, because they have a lack of inspectors to ensure that these nursing home agencies are following all the protocols and things that they should. So thank you for bringing that up. So next, we're going to go to Joseph and then Dr. A.
Hi, Ms. D. Hi, Soul Sister. Thank you for allowing me to come up. Um, First, just before I speak to my point, I just want to thank Dr. Marshall for her presentation, because what she said got me thinking a lot about how I want to try and research my family history, and kind of makes me think about, okay, who am I really? Because I have such a diverse background, so it's kind of like who am I really? But it keeps me motivated to learn and try and uncover as much as I can. So thank you, Dr. Marshall, for that. Ms. D, I wanted to speak to your point a little bit about Project 2025, and you said especially about the uh, the desire of the orange pig, as I refer to him as, to for mass deportations. And I hope that these Latinos for Trump open their eyes and realize they are not going to be safe. Anybody that has a name that sounds Latino is going to be fair game. Now, might I be safe? Possibly, because my last name is not Latino sounding. On the flip side, it's a Jewish last name, so that might hurt me in another sense. But um, uh, I'm extremely fearful, for my mom. Now, she is a naturalized citizen. She has been a naturalized citizen since either 1969 or 1970. So, but they're not going to care about that. They want to throw everything related to the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship out. And that's I don't know what these Latino MAGAs are thinking. There was just an article in the LA Times the other day about how a lot of how Latinos are, like, the way that they treat newly arrived immigrants, and especially ones that are undocumented, and it's appalling, and it's so hypocritical, um, because frankly many of them don't know their own histories, you know and I think and it's been talked about many times how, at least here, I've read it in our local media, how uh, some who are immigrants who came and were undocumented, well, like, they didn't tell their kids that they were, part of it they want to, I guess, I don't know what the reasons are behind it. Part of it is because they want to protect their families. Other reasons maybe out of embarrassment or what have you. But then down the line, then they're getting deported, and then they're like, "Well, why? What happened? I thought I was, I thought I was a citizen, or I thought I was a resident. Well, it turns out they're, undocumented, or like people that their parents brought them when they were, babies, and they thought that they just always grown up here, and they never knew that they were undocumented. Well, now that's then they face deportation, and so it really makes me mad when I see Latinos, especially one or two generations removed, that forget how their families got here. That's not to say that everybody is undocumented. No, that's not the case. But the sacrifices that our elders made is universal. And even just early this morning, I was having a dream where I was speaking to a group of, it was a Latino and Asian group, mostly of immigrants. And I was talking about how in our communities, we have a common problem of a certain percentage of our communities that they got theirs and then they want to pull the ladder up behind them, and it's appalling and it's sad. And you know what? We're all going to be in the same boat if the pig gets back into power. It's going to be very, very ugly for us. So that's all I wanted to say today. I do have to drop out shortly. There's a phone call I need to make, but thank you, Ms. D and Soul Sister, and then I'll keep you updated if I host a space later this week. There's something that I'm kind of thinking about now, that given some of the developments in the past week, that I think we all need to talk about. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Joseph, for coming and sharing that bit of information with us as well. I do think that that is the case. And part of some of the rant that he gave, and a few other articles I think that I looked at around it, they have actually talked about including some of these people who are protesting the Israel Hamas war. Like, they could find themselves in crosshairs too. And, these folks are not one to abide by laws or rules, because it's very authoritarian. It is authoritarian what they're trying to do. So they don't have to abide by any laws. They don't care about any laws. And if they decide that you're a problem, you're a menace, they will find a way and use their tools that they are putting in place to get rid of you. So I do think that it's important that when we encounter these people in conversations in our real life, online, that we kind of remind them that, in part, the reason that you're able to do this so freely is because we do have a democracy. And if you mess around, you withhold your vote or whatever, and we get a Republican, and it doesn't even have to be the former guy, because I want to keep reminding people of that as well. This Project 2025 is not designed, even though many of the people who created it and revised this current edition are from the former guy's cabinet. It is designed to hand to any Republican, whether that's Nikki or whomever, to use, to be able to give them a blueprint and the staff. So that's the key things that we need to remember. Like, we can't afford for any Republican to win office, because this is what they will be using. They gave it to Ronald Reagan, which is how he came about some of the plans and things that he focused on, was because of this mandate for leadership that he was given, which Project 2025 is just a further iteration of that. The welfare queens and the targeting that he did. So the agenda is the same, regardless, for the right wing, any Republican that gets into office. So thank you again so much And now, up next, we have Dr. A, who I am so glad was able to take time out of his day to come and join us. And I really wanted him to talk to us about some of the things that he is doing to amplify and celebrate Black history. So, Dr. A, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, soul sister. Good afternoon to the whole room. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of some of the things I've been engaged in. As you highlighted, I was in the election workers training this morning. That was a learning experience for me. It'll be my first time. I learned a lot. And the overarching thing that I learned, and I know this is off script, was that this country is doing its citizens a disservice by having elections still on a Tuesday based off of an agrarian calendar from the 19th century. We should be voting on weekends where people are off work so that more people could volunteer to run our elections as opposed to just one demographic. I love the demographic that is involved, but we have more diversity in our country. So that was the first thing I learned. Secondly, I call it the Gilead Watch. It's also linked to Project 2025. But here in Georgia, there's a bill that's going to be um, submitted to, or what do they call it? They call it submitted or something, something. They're going to submit a bill in Georgia tomorrow, the School Chaplains Act. So, what this guy in Georgia is proposing to do is to be able to hire school chaplains um, for schools instead of school counselors. Keeping in mind that school chaplains have for the most part, many do not have any certification or licensure in education or counseling. They have many do not have expertise in mental health counseling, and none, to my knowledge, have any expertise, knowledge, or training in the academic career and social emotional development of students. Yet, they are going to put up this bill in order to get chaplains, and we know the chaplains that they want in our schools. I won't even go that route, but I did want to highlight that piece that's going on here in Georgia tomorrow. I done already been calling people. Excuse my English. I know I'm using some vernacular from the backwoods of Alabama, but uh, that's who I am. So
Right. We get it and it works. But they did this in Texas too. Last
they sure did.
session they passed it. I think it's Bill 71 in Texas, but essentially that's the same thing, to bring chaplains in as counselors and to infuse this religiosity into
Well,
the
white
academics.
Christianity, not even
Yes.
religion, is white Christianity. Yeah,
Exactly, and which we have a problem with white Christian nationalism, which is baked into this Project 2025. So go ahead, continue.
yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry for going off script. I know you wanted me to chat about Black history,
No,
but I
no,
had to
no,
get those
no.
things out real quick.
No, that's important too. Like, we kind of go a little all over the place sometimes. Like, we're celebrating and focusing on Black history, but, we still talk about, the current events and the things that are occurring in our democracy because it is important. So,
Absolutely.
no problem.
Good deal. Good deal. Good deal. So, fresh off of the full outrage by certain members of our brothers and sisters here in this country about the singing of a song that we should have kept to ourselves, lift every voice and sing. And by the way, that song is not just a song, right? Number one, it was written by my fraternity brother, James Weldon Johnson, the first black director of the NAACP. Um, it is not just a song, right? That when we sung that as a congregation in my church here in Alabama, we sing it at least once a month, and then every week in February. It brought everyone together, no matter their background, because everyone had a shared journey to that point. And so that was instilled in me. And so to see folks who, number one, don't understand the history, number two, don't want to understand the history, and number three, who continue to avoid or developing any empathy for the journeys of non-white peoples in this country is disgusting to me. And it is also motivating, right? It's very motivating. And I appreciate you bringing me in because the title here is Advocacy Arena. And there is no better subject to advocate for than Black history. You all have covered all the things that have been going on over the country at the state level over the past year. In my career field, we advocate, we have a set of competencies that we use to advocate. I use it in my own personal life as well. We advocate at the individual level, we advocate at the community level, and then we advocate at the societal level. And so I want to share some of the things that I've been doing with regards to Black history and advocacy, just specifically for the month of February, but also things that I engage in year round. So, not to pop my collar. I'm not trying to pop my collar, but hopefully to inspire somebody to do one additional thing in your circles of influence and spheres of influence in your own lives so that we can continue to get the work done. So, at the individual level, what am I doing in Black history, right? So I'm reading some works just so I could bring myself up to speed and to digest old content with my current mindset and worldview. But what's most important is I'm educating my two 8-year-old Black boys, right? So I found some age appropriate readings for them, and one is learning about John Lewis. I found an age appropriate book about John Lewis, and he said, "Daddy, that's your fraternity brother, isn't it?" I said, "You better believe it, son." I said, "You remember what he did?" "I don't quite remember." "Oh, that's not a good answer." So we found him that book, and he's reading one, and his twin brother is reading Ruby Bridges. And they have to read 30 minutes a day, every day, and they're going to write a really brief book report on those individuals, and then they're going to role play those individuals at the end of the month for their grandparents. So we are working with them in that manner to educate. Advocacy at the individual level. Advocacy at the individual level begins with the people who are within arm's reach of you, literal arm's reach. Grandkids, nieces, nephews, husbands, right? Wives, co-workers, willing co-workers. I know some of our co-workers are full of, are full of it, excuse me. And then at the community level, what am I doing? So I think I've shared here about my youth mentoring group. And then I work in collaboration with the guys at our local barbershop. So our local mentoring group, what we're doing is we're teaching the kids here in our community. We're not just teaching them, but we will be touring next Saturday historical landmarks here in our town, here in rural Georgia, which was founded in 1828 for a very specific reason. And that very specific reason, as you all might imagine, is what led to this town being a majority Black town at that particular time, right? In 1828. So that's what we're doing there. At the barbershop, the guys have allowed me to post posters of figures in Black history in the barbershop on one particular wall, right? And I'm able to do that because I built a relationship with those guys, and and every time I go in, I'm always talking about something of substance in addition to joking around, right? So that's what I'm doing at the community level, and then at the societal level, I've been able to integrate history into a multicultural counseling course that I'm teaching. And I'm teaching two sections of the course. I have about 35 students. And out of those 35 students, two of those students are Black students. And those students immigrated here from the Caribbean. So the entire class, for the most part, has very limited knowledge on Black history. And so I've been able to integrate readings. I've been able to integrate assignments that have allowed them to learn in addition to increase their awareness about the value of multiculturalism, about the value of working with individuals who are from culturally dissimilar backgrounds as themselves. And I want to share this quick story, and I'm almost done. I had a gentleman, he's a white male, between the ages of 25 and 55. And he had some really strong views at the beginning of the class. And based on his views, I knew that he probably had a very limited historical knowledge outside of what he'd been taught here in this country. And as Carter G. Woodson highlighted, what's been taught here in this country has done not only black people a disservice, but also white people. And in sharing with him new historical information that he could not refute, it led him to, and then engaging him within our field, it led him to increase his awareness and to reflect in ways that he had not done before, to where he was able to articulate a new view of certain topics. He doesn't think that people who are poor now have chosen to be poor, right? He doesn't think that black people are overly sensitive when we talk about microaggressions and overt and covert aspects of racism. And he was able to articulate that. So mission done, mission well done there. Now, I don't know if I can say it's well done, but that was my mission. And then finally, the spaces. Spaces allows me to connect with people all over this country, even the world, right? And I'm doing a series this month on specifically Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro. I first read it at about 19 during a very specific time in my racial identity development. And now that I'm reading it at 40 plus years old with a new lens, it has some new meanings. I've picked up some new nuggets, and I have wanted to facilitate dialogue amongst others who are willing so that I can not only increase my learning, but help others to increase their learning as well. And so we are meeting on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, where we discuss various chapters of The Miseducation of the Negro. And it has been beyond what I've ever expected because I've learned so much from the people who have come in. Keep in mind, I am not a historian by trade. I'm what we call a shade tree historian, right? I camped out in libraries and I still buy all sorts of literary pieces that I don't read. What's the word for pleasure? My wife thinks I'm crazy. She's like, all you read is history, just history. I said, yes, I need to read
I
some history.
know. I love it. I love my fellow history nerds and historians. Yes.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons is because I'm furious. I am furious that our country and our education system has not shared aspects of history that are vital to this country today, and if we are to move forward, better off than what we were yesterday. And so for that reason, it fuels me as well. So those are the things that I'm doing. I apologize for taking so much time, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to come share that, Miss D. And so, sister, y'all have a good one.
Oh, well, no, you didn't take too much time, and I appreciate you covering all those things, and I appreciate the series that you are doing. I have been enjoying it immensely, and I'm looking forward to this week's because I am a history nerd, and I do think it's important. And as I say, it's even more important because we know that there are active measures to suppress and erase our history, just like suppressing our votes. If it wasn't important and it didn't matter, they wouldn't be working so hard to erase it and to stop it. So that's always a cue for me. The things that they're going after, why are they doing this? And I want to dig into it, and I want to spread it around to prevent it, to counter their efforts. So thank you for all of the things that you're doing. And what I do love about, I must say, about your spaces, because most people who know, a lot of people have spaces and everybody has their own style. But for me, it's very important. Yes, we can vent and we talk about the things that are making us mad, the things that are going on, but solutions are very important to me. And I love that you always bring that into your conversation, which is what I try to do here. It's not enough just for us to be aware of what's wrong or to tell people how we feel, but what are we doing? What can we do? And so for that, I applaud you and admire, the spaces that you have, because I noticed that you too do that. And you often have many personal examples of how you're doing it to give people an idea. So thank you so very much, and keep being great. And I can't wait to hear about your experiences as an election worker, because I had an opportunity to do that, and I think at some point everyone should. I totally agree with you on, our election days being moved because, as you told me, and I knew this to be true too. Most of the people are older, retired people because they're no longer working. These are the people that generally do it. But I think it's important that everyone have an opportunity to serve their country in this way and to, be part of democracy, because I mean, like, you can feel democracy working kinetically that day. You see the grassroots, level of democracy in that voting day, and the part and the role that you're playing. So kudos to you for doing that.
I'd just like to point out, because I always to bring the labor into it. The UAW has done many white papers and has written many letters of urging Congress to change that date. And because there has not been any movement, I believe it was back in the 80s. I'd have to go back and double check that year for you. Is when they started negotiating the day off in their national contracts for UAW members. So just so you know,
Again, we
labor is working. And also another big little piece of information. Um, as of tomorrow, Michigan will no longer be a national right to work state. We did it. We rolled it back.
hallelujah,
Amen.
hallelujah.
Amen.
I love that. I love it. So that is definitely good news. But Tennessee, I don't foresee us changing that much and that quickly. Maybe someday before I'm gone. But it's another reason why many of these companies come here. They're invited here because of the it being a right to work, which is, very ironic phrasing, but essentially it means no unions. Unions aren't welcomed, and they do everything they can to deter them and to stop them. So again, thank you for once again pointing out the significance of union and labor movement efforts and the rights that we enjoy as citizens, whether we're members of the union or not. So, so glad to have your expertise on that, to be able to share with us. Up next, we've got Ngazi and then Karen. And I'm so glad that Ngazi, haven't seen her in a while or heard her voice. So wonderful to see you and to have you come up and join us in conversation. I know that you're always supporting us in spirit, but I know that you work in the school system, and Ngazi is another wonderful voice that I interviewed last year. And you guys should, check her out on my Spotify and YouTube channel. She is an awesome young lady, and I can't wait to hear from her. So, Ngazi, how are you today?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hmm.
Wonderful. So I'm still at the school, and I'm at one of my schools that doesn't have good reception. But thank you for allowing me into the space. Yes, Monday afternoons are hard for me nowadays, but my afternoon meeting got canceled, so I can be here today. But yes, I just
Yay
wanted
for
to.
us.
Yes, I was really glad to see that. But I just wanted to speak to what Dr. A was saying about the push that conservatives are making in our state to kind of restructure education. The chaplain bill actually directly impacts me because I work through a state grant to provide mental health services to the school. So it's a little different here. Um, it's very, I think it's actually probably exactly what the Texas bill is, because we all know that like ALEC just writes the bills and then the legislatures just try to push it through with their states. So it seems like it's very, very similar to that exact same thing of like, well, we don't need school counselors. I will say that the state of Georgia, our advocacy from our school counselors, our social workers, our LPCs is actually very strong. Um, my entire leadership at the agency that I worked with was actually at the Capitol last week, advocating that y'all need us. And the state of Georgia has data from the last 8 years to show that putting mental health counselors in the school through the grant that they have funded for the last 8 years has significantly improved and impacted the state in a positive direction. So I don't have a lot of belief that this bill will go much further than being kind of a messaging bill that they can show their, conservative chops to win reelection in the fall, because even our most rural of counties, I there's one actually where Marjorie Taylor Greene's district is. There's an agency up there that they had one of the highest suicide rates in our state. It was really, really bad. And when the grant was coming out, was the day that they had gone to the school district to advocate for signing on to the grant was the day they had 4 suicides in one day. They couldn't sign the grant quick enough once they realized just how bad it was. And they have had a significant drop in all of that since they have been able to implement it. So when you have real life, tangible results, it's the same thing with the school vouchers. It's a messaging bill for the conservatives in our state to be able to go and scream about school choice. But even the conservatives in the rural areas know that school choice means that our schools don't get funded and then your kid doesn't get an education. So it has bipartisan opposition. And I anticipate that this bill will, they'll quiver about it in the Senate. They'll talk about it like they care about it, but it's probably not going to go anywhere because there's more evidence to support that real life licensed social worker, that real life licensed mental health provider connected to all of our community agencies that don't have enough funding anyways is much more helpful to our kids who are struggling. And we provide not just children's services in our schools, we provide for the families across our state. And when I say like our significantly more rural areas, like I can see the map of where we are working so hard for so little pay to do the best that we can to keep our kids mentally safe, mentally well. And Georgia in general has a really great job of pushing our mental health, even though we're not expanding other services. So I'm this is the first time me hearing about this bill, but I'm like, this is not a state that this bill is probably going to go very far. Um, but we can watch and see. It is an election year, and things have definitely shifted politics wise, but I just don't see how that would be beneficial to the people seeking reelection when we end up going backwards in the progress we have made as a state mental health wise. But I just wanted to add that.
Well, thank you so much. And I know that you can speak to it from, a real life experience because that is the work that you do. And so I was happy to see that you came up to add on to that. And here in our state too, which, they're trying to push the voucher bill, statewide, and they're getting lots of pushback from those rural counties. And when he released his budget, they of course, Governor Lee put additional money in there for SRO officers and supposedly counseling. I have not yet seen them trying to use the Christian chaplains as counselors, but I don't imagine that. I imagine that we will be seeing some of that right now. I am searching for information because our lawmakers are fighting to get Governor Lee to release information. He has put money, I think about $1 billion or so aside to give to corporations, but no one knows who it's going to. And of course, that is very problematic. And our lawmakers, our Democratic lawmakers, are screaming about it. And I'm looking for any information that I can because we all suspect that it is probably going to undergird these efforts toward privatizing schools, their vouchers, or the underpinning the education commission, which he set up, which was basically to stop local municipalities from pushing back because they have to, these charter schools have to present to the school boards in different counties and have to be accepted. And when they're not accepted, then they go back to this education commission, which was created and appointed by our governor. And initially, there was a lot of outcry because they were turned down in several locales, and they went. And then at that time, some of the rural residents who were Republicans spoke out, and they were angry because they was like, how dare you, like overturn our right? And so that's what people need to understand. Like, this authoritarian push, while it may not affect you in the short, immediate term, eventually it will, because when your rights get taken away, then it makes it easier to take others' rights away. And eventually everyone's rights are taken away, so no one is safe if we don't have a democracy. And we need to continue to make that crystal clear to constituents and people who are out here. So I'm going to go to Karen, and then we have a new voice up. I have not heard from her, but I'm looking forward to hearing from her. Karen, and then LJ.
Hi, thanks, Dee. Yeah, I love sitting in listening mode because I do. I gain so much out of your spaces. And Ghazi, man, like, woman, you sure bring it to the table. I love hearing you speak. So thank you for your input. And Dr. A, I wanted to let you know that I jumped up to speak because of what you had said regarding the barbershop and putting a wall up with historic facts. Let me tell you, sir, right on, because the barbershop is okay. My husband has gone to the same barber in Tucson, Arizona since he was little, and it's the same guy. And he is just a wealth of local African American history in Tucson. And when Michael goes in, there's never an appointment, so everybody gets to sit around and just hobnob with each other and tell stories, and some of them are even factual. So, and I'm never allowed in the barbershop because Michael said that is just not a place for me. I'm supposed to just admire how handsome he looks when he steps out of the barbershop, which I do. But my husband took our grandson when he was 14 years old. And Nathaniel, for the first time, got to hear stories about his great grandfather. Nat Russell in Tucson was the acting, he was the, not the acting, he was the president of the NAACP of the local Tucson chapter for 8 consecutive terms. He was right in the mix of everything in Tucson when the civil rights movement was going strong. And he had a very large family that they were raising Catholic, and he had all of his kids in Catholic school. Nat was a contractor. He got out of the Air Force and he went right into the service of the city as a police officer. And he was actually the first officer of the first African American officer of Tucson. I'm so emotional about this because I'm just so proud. And he also made detective. And these were all firsts for this area. There had been segregation in Tucson, just like everywhere. Tucson, I believe, came out of it faster because of the community that was here and because of the active participation of everybody involved and the peaceful activation and the history that got shared. Well, Nathaniel sat, and of course, Poppy, my husband, got his haircut, and then Nathaniel got his haircut by the same man that has been cutting the heads of Russells for a long time. Anyway, Nathaniel walked out of that barbershop that day, and he had been educated by other local people who had lived it, and they were able to tell him about his great grandfather and give him pieces of his family's history in civil rights, in human rights, in women's rights. There's, these men shared these stories so freely with my grandson that Nathaniel has never been the same. He's been proud and strong and confident. His grades improved. He got a sense for who he really is and who his family is. So, Dr. A, thank you so much. The barbershop. I mean, who would think that you could just go and actually get a history lesson while you're getting a stylish haircut? But it happens. Sir, thank you. That you just inspired joy in my soul today, and I wanted to thank you personally. And it's good to hear your voice. I'm going to come into your spaces, please. But God bless you, sir, and thank you for continuing to educate the world, because that's where we're all the strongest. The smartest people recognize the other people, and we all appreciate each other because we all bring what we need to the table to make this world a better place. Thank you and God bless.
Oh, thank you so much. You want to respond, Dr. A?
Yeah, just listening to that story, it even reminded me um, of my own experiences as a young kid growing up in rural Alabama. Because my dad took me to the barbershop, and I would listen to these guys talk about all manner of things, including the history. It is just, it's almost like a rite of passage. And I think we don't place enough value on those spaces, specifically for Black men, in the same way that other groups have spaces where they can commune and learn from one another. So that blessed my heart hearing about your husband and your grandson, and I'm glad that my little actions brought those memories up for you, and hopefully they will inspire you to go out and do a little something out in Tucson. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I love hearing these stories like this, and the fact that, again, it just goes to show how we learn from one another and how we're able to inspire one another. And that's because of you guys. So I appreciate you all. Go ahead, Karen.
Dr. A, that is exactly how legacy lives. It lives by stories, and it lives because these stories connect the heart. And as long as we're connecting our hearts to one another, we can recognize each other as we are earthlings. We are all earthlings. And when we connect, we see our similarities, we see our virtues, we see our cultures, and we share generously. We're supposed to share abundantly. Abundant sharing is given to us in the Gospels. And when we do that, that's when we connect and we become one group of like-minded people who share different experiences. So yes, the barbershop is, I consider the barbershop to be a legacy connector. And
Absolutely.
it's just a wonderful thing. So praise be. I tell you, it's a good day. I needed this today,
Oh,
guys.
thank you. Well, we needed your voice. Your voice has helped to make this an awesome experience. And I want to now go to a new speaker that we have, LJ, and I'm looking forward to hearing from her. And I just want to give a shout out to someone who's in the space who is running here in Tennessee for a state house seat from my old hometown district. And I'll talk about that. They may not be able to talk today, but I want to talk about their race in my county. So, LJ, go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Mhm.
Okay, good evening, my fellow kings and queens on the other side of the Atlantic. I really am going to try not to cry because I don't know why I haven't clocked onto this space before, but it's my first time clocking into you, and I was just feathering through as I'm looking through my phone today, and I'm from the UK, and so therefore we have Black History Month in October. And my first post this month was to again encourage my community here to connect with the History Month in February. I call it Our Story Month in America, because that's where the story started. The History Month story started, and we just need to just embrace each other and learn something from what's happening on that side, so that we can, just like the sister just said, Karen just said, we can, we embrace each other, and knowledge is definitely power. And, Dr. A, I'm going to tell you, tears. I love young people. I work with a lot of young people. I'm also a broadcast journalist, and I have like a little section when I do my broadcasts for Children and Young People's Corner, and I'm particularly feeding into them all of the time the reason they need to know and understand the shoulders on which they stand, so that they can stand tall and be proud of who they are. And to hear grades going up and those things, and that bit where you're saying they're not just reading the book, they're going to have to write a little bit about what they learned. And oh, that thing just moved my soul. I'm going to pray extra hard again tonight, because something happened in this space for me today, and I'm inspired by you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that you came up just to say that and to be on the other side of the pond,
Yeah.
and recognize the importance of it, everywhere and even there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
last night
we're,
last night for some reason, I'm always up late, but they put Selma the movie on, and I've actually hit up the BBC today and want to know why they put Selma the movie on at 11:30 at night, when everybody's gone to bed, and here they have, everyone's got work and stuff, and they've got like the whole evening in the prime time slot, where they could be, or where they'd put a Holocaust movie when it's in season and all of that. But they will never do that thing. There was no advertising about it. I just happened to stumble on it because it came on after the football, and I thought, okay, I've seen some of the movie. I saw it in the before it even hit the movie. So I stayed up to watch it. I'm one of the persons that I crossed the pond to be at your inauguration. In 2009, I stood in that mall. I stood at Lincoln Memorial when 2 days before Barack Obama was inaugurated, and he stood right in that Malcolm X, that Martin Luther King spot, and where he told about the dream, and he stood right there, and he said, I'm not going to be able to fix everything, but I ask you to pray for me. And I prayed for that president every day, because I couldn't believe, all I could say when I stood amongst these 250,000 people and realized what Dr. Martin did without telex and technology and space, all the androids and whatever. All I could say was, Dr. Martin, look what you done. And then I was fortunate enough to go to the mall. I came to America to go to Times Square, or to go to Rockefeller Center with my cousin, because my birthday's in January, to watch this on the big screen. And as it happened, one of her friends called and said, oh, we're supposed to be going up to Washington, but someone's dropped out. Does your cousin want to come? You've never seen anybody pack their bag so fast. I was there. I was about half a football pitch away from the front, and I saw Barack Obama put his hand on that Bible as the 44th president. The colored man went to the White House, and as long as I live, I stood there for everybody, every single person of shade that has carried that burden, those that have gone on before and those that are coming up now, to realize and recognize history was made. I'll never live it over. I'll never.
oh, that is an awesome story. And I'm so glad that you were able to share it here with us. I tell you, we have some great contributors
Thank you.
who
Thank you for
come
allowing
to.
me.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you. Well done. So next we're going to go to Ingrid. But before we do, I just want to give a shout out to Brian Robinson, who is in the space. He's listening. He's traveling. He's busy because he's running a campaign. And I want you guys to follow him. And I know many of us, we're all over the country, but we do take candidates and help support them, whether that's amplifying their campaign or contributing if we can. I want you to help this young man because he is running. You guys are familiar with my cousin who ran for the county commission, and she used to come to the space. He's running from that same county. And this county, because my cousin, you are familiar with how they denied her a rightful runoff to that seat, they have now entrenched themselves, they being the constitutional Republicans. And we have a couple of races coming up. I think it's several school board seats, also a judge, and one other. I have to go back and look at it, fails me, but they have found their candidates. And this is how our democracy is being taken away. It's, like we don't have to sit back and wait and just worry about keeping a Republican from becoming president, but we have to keep an eye on what is going on at our local level, because that is where our democracy is actively being taken away from us at each and every day, especially in states like mine, which is a GOP trifecta, and they are slowly but surely moving us toward fascism in these states. Like, of course, we have the voucher issue that we're working on, but I spoke about it in Dr. A's space last week. But they just recently took over the board of directors for TSU, an HBCU, and we are a state that's blessed to have five HBCUs. They weren't satisfied. They have been chomping at the bits to do this. They finally achieved it. They got it passed because they ran Dr. Glenda Glover away. She was the president, and she resigned last year. They were grilling her while denying them the same funding that another land grant school, because Tennessee State is a land grant school, but it's an HBCU. UT is also a land grant school, but they get all the funding that they need, and then some, and promoted. And, it seems that they were angry that with all of the lack of adequate resources, Dr. Glover was able to recruit an untold amount of students to the school. She attracted them there. And so they were angry and dragging her about this, and her not having, or the school not having adequate housing and these kinds of things, which they don't have because they don't have the funding, and that they can't connect those things, or that people, or they think that people who are paying attention don't see these things, is mind blowing, but it doesn't stop them. So again, I just want to, again, remind you guys that it's so important wherever you live to know what is going on locally, to be involved locally, to know the people who are running, to know the seats that are available, and that there should never be any Republican running anywhere in this country unopposed. I am in a work group that is a PAC. It's called Blue Tennessee, and we will be launching officially in March. And we should be able to fund candidates like Brian and others, because it takes a lot of money. Unfortunately, the way our political system works, it just takes a lot of money to do this. So even when people are willing, they may not have all of the resources, whether that's funding or just support for, boots on the ground and that sort of thing. So that's my way of advocating and helping, is to be a part of this organization that seeks to help folks like Brian and others. So again, thank you for being here, Brian, and I look forward to us talking. And at some point, you're coming into the space to talk to us and to share your platform with us, and why you're running and those types of things. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that. And then next, we're going to go to Ingrid.
Hello, Dee. Hello, Soul Sister. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak in advocacy arena today. I must tell you, hearing LJ brought a frog to my throat, and hearing Karen and Dr. A, there's so many things that I could see in the stories that they were telling. My mom came to this country in 1963. And in 1965, I was going to be about 8 years old, before she came to visit, come back from here to the States to visit us in Venezuela. I was afraid for my mom because I saw what was happening with the civil rights movement, the dogs, the fire hydrants, the beating of John Lewis. I knew of John Lewis when I was a kid in Venezuela. Okay, and when I saw that that you always end the story, you always end our space by mentioning his words all the time, and it always brings some comfort because I had this wonderful social studies teacher, and she did what Dr. A did with us. We always had to read something about, we had Black history every day. Every day we had to read about someone and then write about them and then discuss it in the class and say something memorable of them. And I thought that that was a nice way of building. So here I am, this Afro Latina kid came to this country and was able to embrace the history because my mom got the opportunity that the forefathers, the blacks in this country built, that were able to make it easier for mom to come here. 1965 opened the door for a lot of my family members to come here because that's where we had the last the immigration, where people of color, India. That's when, like, Nikki's parents, Kamala Harris' parents, they came around that time. That was the influx. So when we talk about immigration, I know that also we had AKA Mickey when she talked about what was going on with a lot of the immigrants in this country that are not being basically not treated right. And that has always been a history. I know of it because I experienced it when I came to this country too. So it's just so nice being here. Like I said, coming to your space, it's empowering. It's like my fix, my Monday fix. If I can't speak, I sit and listen. And sometimes I listen at the bottom because in this way it doesn't give me that encouragement to ask for the hand, and it just lets me just absorb what everybody's saying. And I got to tell you, it's been an honor to be in this space and have the opportunity to share this experience with all you guys. And I cannot, I mean, I'm sorry to be crying, but it really, really reached my heart today. And it's so nice to be here to share it with all of you. Thank you so much for all what you guys do every single time. And I know together, especially in this space, because we are being empowered and educated. And with you behind us, we are going to get into good, necessary trouble. And I know we're in good hands. And thanks again for you and Soul Sister for having this space for us to come and share. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ingrid. We appreciate you. I appreciate you coming and sharing your story. And, there are millions of stories in this country from because we are a country of immigrants, and we help to build this country. This country would not be what it was were it not for the immigrants, and the fact that there is a concerted effort by the far right wing party in this country to deport them, to erase them, to dehumanize them should be very concerning to us all. They want to basically whitewash the country. So we're going to get close to closing. And before we do, I just want to share this a little bit from this article on Project 2025. And it kind of goes back to the forward that I talked about in January. But just a reminder, and we're going to dig more into this Department of Defense because they are openly now giving speeches and talking about their plans to militarize, National Guard and other things. But in the article, they talk about they being the Republicans, charge the left with trying to control other people's lives, while they themselves are the ones who propose and champion state level and federal bans on abortion and gender affirming care. And make no mistake about it, that is in the DOD chapter of this book. They would ban transgender people from serving. The left does not believe that all men are created equal. They think they are special. They certainly don't think all people have an unalienable right to pursue the good life. They think only they themselves have such a right, along with a moral responsibility to make decisions for everyone else. They don't think any citizen, state, business, church, or charity should be allowed any freedom until they first bend the knee. Yet, the Republicans, want to use the force of law to impose their religious beliefs on others by determining intimate bodily decisions for pregnant women and LGBTQ people. Lawmakers that identify with the political left support laws to empower individuals to make their own decisions about their bodies and lives, whereas the political right is passing laws limiting people's ability to make these choices. They explain what they believe freedom means in the Constitution. This is their explanation. An individual must be free to live as his creator ordained to flourish. Our Constitution grants each of us the liberty to do what we want, but not what we want, but what we ought. The pursuit of the good life is found primarily in family, marriage, children, Thanksgiving dinners, and the like. Yeah. And on immigration reform, they say the only direct impact of open borders on pro open borders elites is that the constant flow of illegal immigration suppresses the wages of their housekeepers, landscapers, and busboys. On billionaire climate activists, they say that their concern for the environment is not a political cause, but a pseudo-religious one meant to baptize liberals. Ruthless pursuit of absolute power in the holy water of environmental virtue. So this is them dissing, regulations and clean air and these types of things. So I just kind of wanted to, I think it's a very well done article. Climate changing oil and gas is not the problem, they say. It's the solution, they say. America's vast reserves of oil and natural gases are not an environmental problem. They are the lifeblood of economic growth. So stick a pin in that, because also here in our state, like about 2 years ago, remember I told you guys, they passed a law that gave more funding to the oil and gas and the fossil fuel industry, while also taking away the right of local municipal polities to have a say in where they go. And there are a couple of communities already fighting because they are pushing for gas lines to come through. Some of them are farmland, others are not. They just don't want it in their community. Memphis, the west part of our state, is a state that is a part of the state that has seen so many environmental abuses, mainly in largely Black and brown areas. A lot of what they're accusing us of, it's projection. And, for them, it's about money, privatizing everything. And we just need to remind people of this. We need to understand it for ourselves, to know what their talking points are so that we can understand them and that we can flood the zone with truth and facts, because they project and they twist them, and we have to always continue to correct those things. So with that being said, I see Greg has come up to join us, so I'm going to give him an opportunity to speak, and then I'm going to start to wrap us up if no one else would like to come and share. But I just want you guys to, again, remember to keep Secretary Lloyd Austin and the State Department in prayer, because they're dealing with a lot, and he's the head, and he's dealing with a lot personally. He's a good man, and I think he's the perfect man for the job, but he needs to be in good health, and so I'm praying for his health to be restored quickly, and I hope you will join me in that prayer. So, Greg, you're at speaker, and then I'm going to give Dr. Marshall an opportunity for some closing thoughts, and then my fabulous co-host.
Thank you, Dee. It's great to be here. Thanks for the mic. It's always good to be here and hear what you and Soul Sister and everybody else has to say. There's always so much valuable information that comes out every time I come in, every time I'm able to come in. I wanna I wanna speak a little bit, not too long. I want to say that I do apologize for the loss from last night's game to the San Francisco 49ers. They played a good game. I didn't have the opportunity to watch it because they didn't show it on regular TV, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not worried about it. I got great updates during the game. But yeah, the San Francisco 49ers and the Chiefs game last night, I hear was a real nail biter. And yeah, everybody played well, everybody played hard, and they all did a good job. So nobody lost in my book. The people who lost were the MAGAs. They were so triggered from the beginning to the end of the game. One person in particular who has been triggered is that idiot Nick Adams. He's been fired up and been going after Travis Kelsey, I think his name is. He's been going after him ever since last night. Now, this man always talks about being an alpha male. He knows nothing about alpha males. Alpha males don't alpha males don't act the way he does. They don't talk about what they're gonna do. They just go out and they do it, regardless of whether they make friends or enemies. So Nick Adams had no clue of what alpha males do. But I'm glad that the game went the way it did last night. You know, both teams played well. They played hard, and they were very, very good. They were good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, in my opinion, both teams are winners. And
Absolutely. I love the close games. To me, those are the best Super Bowl ones, and they were both absolutely great teams for sure.
yeah, yeah, that's how I look at it. So what? My Green Bay Packers, they lost. Big deal. They didn't make it through the NFC playoffs. I'm not worried about that.
All right.
I'm just glad that both teams played well, and I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, thank you. And I think LMZ spoke about how they were using this and Kelsey's connection to Taylor Swift, who is, you know, um, getting a lot of press, and he's getting a lot of press because of it. And
Right.
just um, we need to continue to stay focused. It is a game, and it should be a game that brings us together, in some good rivalry. But we're at a place and time in our country where everything is being politicized, and they have decided to politicize, a Super Bowl game. So
My
with
favorite
that.
thing is the fact that we triggered MAGA all night last night, and that was the best part of it all.
Well, I'm glad that you were made happy by that, Greg. So, with that, I would like to give Dr. Marshall an opportunity to leave us with some closing thoughts, and then my fabulous co-host.
Can you hear me? I've been having some difficulty
Oh,
connecting.
yes.
Okay,
Hmm.
great. Um, As always, it's been a great, great Monday afternoon. Um, I liked everything that I heard. And Dr. I am a favorite of giving students a question or a book or an article or even a video or TV program to watch, read, listen to, and then write about that experience. I think that is one of the best teaching methods that a person can have. I became a teacher. That was not my original goal, but I became a teacher because I needed a job. And my professor during my first master's suggested that I teach a college study skills class. I had the fortunate opportunity at that moment to teach men coming back from Vietnam. And that totally changed my life. And so listening to the different activities that you engaged in and are engaged in just brought so much joy to my heart. Thanks to all of you who shared your stories. And I've just been uplifted, as I think everyone in this space has. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Soul Sister. And I think the last thing that I would want to leave you with is I try to post information on specials that happened during Black History Month. And I know that the times here, Eastern Standard Times, doesn't always, of course, it's not going to mesh with other times, but I want to encourage all of you when you look at your stations, if you see a program coming on, screenshot the time or the name of the program and post it because our society is more visual today. I think as a country, we need to also increase our reading, but we have to meet people where they are, and where a lot of the country is in visual media. So posting that information so that people can record and watch in their own time, at their own time and their own leisure. Those would be my parting words. Share what you see in your community if it's something that we can watch online. And thanks for a super, super great space today. Have a great
Well,
rest of the week to everybody.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marshall, for helping to make it a great space, as you always do when you share with us. So, yes, and I love that you share the things that you're watching. I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and I hope you guys will take it to heart and do that. And since she mentioned that, I did mention it before, but I will mention it again because now there are new episodes. But on Hulu, and I found out that it's also on Disney as well. But this program called Genius MLK/X, and it's done in such a way that it starts with Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X as children. So it gives you their origin story, and it kind of cuts back and forth between them, but not in a disconcerting kind of way. It's very connective, the way that they do it, and to show their rise to how most of us have gotten to know them and the things that they did in history and during those times. So I would encourage you to watch that series. I have some new episodes to watch. And I mentioned once before watching Invisible Beauty, which is a on Hulu, and this is the story. It's about the fashion industry, but I think it's very relevant to our Black history because it's someone who made a trailblazer in the industry for models of color, not just Black, but from around the world, all and men, women. At a time when fashion designers, fashion houses were not using or looking at these models. And she too formed her own movement to ensure and call them out publicly, had press conferences and meetings and other organized efforts to force people in the industry to rethink what they were doing and to start using more models. And she got through to a few of them, Calvin Klein being one of them. They listened, and her name, the story is about Beth Ann Hardison, who is Kadeem Hardison's mom, but she's also just a badass. She's just an awesome woman, and I am in awe of her. So I would encourage you to also watch that documentary. It's called Invisible Beauty, and also the documentary of Toni Morrison, which is on Hulu. It's called Pieces I Am, and she is just one of my all-time favorite Black authors. I just love her, the richness of her storytelling has just not been rivaled. And not that they have to compete with one another, but the first time, uh, my favorite novel is her first novel, The Bluest Eyes. So I would encourage you to watch the documentary on her, to just learn a little bit more about her, her process, and the people whose lives that she touched. And I feel like she still touches lives today. So thank you for that suggestion, Dr. Marshall. And with that, I'm going to go to my fabulous co host for an opportunity for some closing words.
Thank you so much for everyone for coming in and sharing your stories, or for just joining us, and providing a listening ear and taking something away from today's space. It has been another stellar one, another blue ribbon winner, I'll say. And it's really time for those who haven't taken been given or taken a reality check for themselves to get one, because we are in the midst of a battle for our freedoms and democracies, here in this country, and it is not something to be taken lightly. Um, it's really kind of interesting that the former guy is always, talking about uh, the migrants, and really, his record in regards to the border is abysmal. He did nothing, and he could have done something. And this is not to say that I'm encouraging a mass deportation, because I don't think that that is the answer. Um, and I don't even believe that the process that they would like to do it in is humane in any way. We've seen what they would do on a small scale. The cages, the sterilization of women, the separation of families. It's pretty disgusting. And I don't want to see a repeat of it. And, it would be all um, underrepresented people that would be at risk. It wouldn't just be the Hispanic and Latino community. It wouldn't just be the Jewish community. It wouldn't just be the Arab or Muslim community. We all would be affected in some way, especially when they speak of internment camps and many of the other plans that they have. Because, like I said, a lot of what they are even thinking of doing, is being borrowed from the Reconstruction era, slave codes, the Jim Crow era, this deputizing of local authority, um, reminds me of the slave patrol. This idea of everyone having to be Christian, reminds me of South Carolina, where um, slaveholders had the authority over over the enslaved, our enslaved ancestors, to indoctrinate them um, into Christianity, whether they wanted to or not, willingly. The loss of bodily autonomy, again, shadow slavery. It is, there's so much that can go wrong if we don't get this right. I am not trying to sow doom and gloom because I believe in the power of the people who actually go and vote. I just want to encourage us to get involved in civic organizations, whether it is being a poll worker or poll watcher, or offering rides. We need to be having boots on the ground, texting, calling, postcards, writing letters, calling our Congress people. When we see legislation that we don't agree with, it is vitally important that we keep making sure that our voices are heard. Leave it all on the table. Um, don't let this election season pass and say, well, I could have done this or I could have done that. Do something, because doing nothing is not going to bring us the type of victory that we need to ensure that our freedoms are protected moving forward. You know, just a reminder that in 2017, the Republican National Committee was once again allowed to collude, for lack of a better word, with voter suppression groups, and they have geared up and gone full steam ahead. They had been banned since the 1980s from associating with them, but you know, at the end of the former guy's administration, the ban was lifted, and they have not stopped, and they are racking it up. And it's not that we haven't been paying attention; it's that the media is not reporting on it. I think Geechee said something really important when he talked about what the local news focuses on. He's exactly right. I rarely watch it. I'll read my local newspaper online, but tuning in just to the local news station, no. Because it is that if it bleeds, it leads type of commentary happening, and I just that's not giving me any information. And he's right. The stories are usually not even focused on the communities in which we live. But it's projecting this idea that everything sucks. And I know that while I'm speaking, it might be sounding like that's what I'm projecting, but that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that there are true, real, accurate, factual um, dangers ahead of us if we don't do what we need to do. So not everybody is getting the same information that we're getting. And so we have to make sure that we are educating people as much as we can, who are willing to listen, who are trying to do better in their own everyday lives. So, and record it, because we live in historical times, and it will be important. It will be important to be able to go back, even ourselves, and digest what we were feeling, how we were feeling, and in those moments, and the amount of hope that we still held. You know, one of the programs that, and I spoke about it in another space that Dr. Marshall had reminded me of, and I watched, talked about how the very first published works from our enslaved ancestors was remarkably a book of poetry, a book about love. And I just found that so compelling, that in the midst of what we know was trauma, they still focused on love. And I just think that that is a banner of hope for us. If they could speak about love in those times and hope in their dreams, then absolutely we can as well. Doesn't mean we don't do the work. It just means that we cannot lose focus of the fact that part of what garners our success will be our own uh, attitudes towards it. And for me, I see victory. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for being here, even though you were not feeling the best. I'm glad that you mustered enough strength to come and join us and do a fabulous job with the contributions that you made. And I want to thank everyone who participated, who came and presented information that I had, asked of you. And I appreciate that when I reach out to you guys to ask you to come and present something to the discussion, the weekly discussion, that if you're able to, you always do. So I just want to thank all of you for doing that. And Dr. Marshall did a fabulous job today, and so did Dr. A. I just want to thank you guys for always doing that when I ask. And a few others were going to, but in real life happens. So we understand that too. And I know many of you are listening from work and are unable to, but I see you. Even if you never come up to speak, I see you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you carrying the work that we do into other spaces and places in real life and on this timeline, because I believe in the power of the ripple effect. And you may not necessarily have to be there, but if someone is there to take our story and carry it somewhere else, then you touch people that we couldn't touch, and then they take it and they carry it somewhere else and they touch someone else. So it is expanding and growing. And this is how we fight the false narratives that the mainstream media tries to shove down our throats, and how we are not always on the defense fighting against their propaganda and their lies, but just telling our stories and telling our truths. So I just want to thank all of you for coming here, sharing in the stories that are shared here, sharing your stories, being inspired by the stories that are shared, and carrying them out into your communities in real life. So appreciate you, Karen, and so many others. T-Bug, what a wonderful story that you shared with us. And I start naming people. I know I'm going to forget someone, but it was nice to meet you, LJ. And to know that you were touched, and your experience of coming here to America and experiencing part of our history, which is also your history, as African American, is just wonderful. And I thank you all so very much for the contributions that you have made to make this a lovely space. And I just want to leave you with a couple of quotes. Of course, I'm going to close with John Lewis, but here's a few others, because it is Black History Month, that I hope you will find inspiring as I do. And this one is: never be limited by other people's limited imaginations. This was from Dr. Mae Jemison, the first African American female astronaut. The other: the cost of liberty is less than the price of repression. That's Dr. W.E. Du Bois. And then thirdly: in recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. And I feel like that's what happened here today. And that was from Thurgood Marshall, the first African American U.S. Supreme Court member. So just food for thought. I'm one of these people who love quotes, love history. And I want to just leave you guys with this from the late great the late great Representative John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And I just want to thank all of you for coming here today and getting in good trouble with Soul Sister and I. And I know you're going to continue to be good troublemakers because it is necessary that we stir things up and make noise when we see injustices and things aren't right. We have to speak up. That's good trouble. So I just want to encourage you guys to continue making good trouble. And I hope that this space will put you in a great space and place to do that, to carry you through the week with information and inspiration as it does me every week. And I just want to thank you guys for helping me to get off to a great start again this week and invite you back here next week, same time, same place. So with that, peace and blessings.